Chapter 454. 2 chapters in one, 7,500 words. My debt has been replenished. Mu Xuetong was holding the Silver City's little princess, Han Yenmeng, with one hand. He had exhausted all his strength, and was running at full speed over the snowy ground. He didn't even dare to look back because he knew that his speed would inevitably slow down if he were to turn his head, even if it was only for a moment. In fact, there was a possibility that he would be overtaken even if it was only for the blink of an eye. Then, the sacrifice of the third elder and the others would have been in vain. Therefore, he had been blindly running away in grief and indignation with all his might. He could hear the sound of an explosion coming from behind him. It was as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was splitting. It was the sound of a Shunxian expert using his full strength. In fact, he was using every ounce of his potential to attack the enemy with all his might. Mu Xuetong's cultivation was only at the Tianxian level. However, he was the son of a famous family. Moreover, there were many Xinxian experts in the Silver City. Therefore, he was able to understand the sound of such a sound. Then, the third elder's shrill laughter came from afar. Xiao Xingyun, are you satisfied now? Ha ha ha. Xiao Xingyun's furious voice echoed, you want to risk your life? Everyone, attack with all your strength. Chop him into pieces. Then, there was an unusually chaotic sound of weapons clashing. However, the sound was quite weak due to the distance. Then, a long and miserable howl resounded throughout the snowy peak. Then, the third elder's resolute voice echoed, come on, accompany me to hell. Ha ha ha. Boom! A violent explosion was heard, followed by a series of blood-curdling screams. Mu Xuetong's eyes were streaming with tears. He knew that the third elder, Han Feiyun, had sacrificed himself to the point that his body was smashed to pieces. The third elder didn't even leave his corpse intact in order to delay for as long as possible. Mu Xuetong flew up with Han Yenmeng in tow. Whooshing sounds were heard as they passed through the dense pine forest. They left faint footprints in 3 directions. Then, he took a deep breath and unleashed his full strength. He flew 80 feet away like a meteor. Then, he brought Han Yenmeng with him and fell down a cliff. Then, he disappeared from sight. Setting up a diversion here was the best way to escape. Xiao Xingyun arrived at the scene as light as a feather after a short while. He carefully looked all around and waved his hand furiously. Search carefully. There were footprints in the snow. They couldn't have gone far. Split into 3 groups and search carefully. Now that only the thief is left, he won't be a problem. Search every inch of this land. They had to find them even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground. If you find him, don't leave him alive. Kill him without mercy. Jun Moxie and Jun Dashao had a good sleep. They slept all the way until the next day. It felt like it had been a long time since he had such a satisfying sleep. Ku'er was guarding the door for him. This little girl was very responsible. No one was allowed to go in and disturb the young master's sleep. Then, a servant came to report that a man named Bailey Luoyun had come to see him after lunchtime. Jun Moxie stretched his waist and sat up. He then muttered, he arrived earlier than I had expected. He arrived 3 days earlier. He then stood up and said, I'll personally go out and see that brat. Bailey Luoyun was a young genius of the Bailey clan. His entire body was covered with dust, and his face was weary. However, his eyes were filled with an unusual firmness and sharpness. Moreover, his body also had a bit more ruthless temperament than before. Bailey Luoyun was just standing there. However, his entire body was emitting a cold and imposing aura. This made the guards of the Jun residence feel very uncomfortable. So, they couldn't help but raise their guard to the maximum. It must be known that the Jun family was a military family. So, even the guards of the Jun residence had been to the battlefield. They had used swords and spears. So, one could well imagine the sharpness of his aura if he could shake these experienced warriors. A trace of surprise flashed in Bailey Luoyun's eyes when he saw that June Moxie had personally come to see him. He then cupped his fists and said, "Young master, I've returned." "It's good that you've returned." June Moxie smiled faintly. "How did the matter go?" "I've killed all 50 of them. Not a single one of them was left behind. Moreover, there's no trace of them apart from the few lines of the poem," Bailey Luoyun replied faintly. However, his tone was filled with incomparable self-confidence and arrogance. "Well done. You've worked hard." June Moxie patted his shoulder. "I've arranged a place for you. So, you should take a good rest. We'll talk about the other matters later." June Moxie frowned. Bailey Luoyun's position hadn't been arranged properly. I could clearly feel his arrogance a moment ago. This is unacceptable. It's not a good thing for an assassin to be so arrogant. "Young master, I don't know, my father and the others?" Bailey Luoyun asked in a somewhat hesitant manner. "I said that we'll talk about the other matters later. Didn't you hear me?" June Moxie's complexion sank. He looked at Bailey Luoyun with a profound look in his eyes. His gaze was full of authority. Bailey Luoyun suddenly understood. His complexion turned green as he bowed respectfully. "Luoyun obeys." June Moxie smiled. "This is your filial piety. I'll only do it this once. There won't be a next time." Bailey Luoyun replied respectfully, "Thank you for your magnanimity, young master. The emperor doesn't need hungry soldiers. So, I'll fulfill my promise to you. They've arrived at the Tianxiang city 3 days ago. I've already arranged a place for your father to stay. Forget it. You'll feel uneasy if you don't see your father. So I'll take you there. Come with me." June Moxie stepped out of the door and led him to the back. Bailey Luoyun was a smart man. So, he only needed to remind him once. He didn't need to say anything. Nor did he need to explain anything. Everyone was well aware of the situation. There was a large house not far from the June family's residence. Luoyun Mansion. The 3 glittering words hung high in the sky. Under the sunlight, they looked resplendent and magnificent. Several guards were standing at the entrance. They were full of vigor and had sturdy statures. Bailey Luoyun's father was comfortably sitting on a recliner in front of the courtyard. He was dressed in a luxurious Xian beast skin robe. There was a look of contentment and happiness on his face. Behind him, there was a pretty little maidservant who was diligently massaging his shoulders. In the courtyard, there were also a few maidservants who were diligently cleaning up. Bailey Luoyun was pleasantly surprised to find that his father's complexion was much better than before. In fact, his complexion had become rosier. In fact, his entire body was glowing with a healthy luster. In fact, it seemed as if he had been reborn. In fact, it seemed as if he had become several years younger. Even the wrinkles on his face had lessened. "This will be your home from now on." Bailey Luoyun's home. June Moxie smiled and said in a soft voice. "My home." Bailey Luoyun was dumbfounded. Home. I used to have a home. But that home of the Bailey family was filled with painful memories. It was a cage that I couldn't break free from. In fact, it didn't feel like a home at all. How could I have imagined that I would have a home here? A brand new home. A home that belongs to me and my father. Bailey Luoyun suddenly felt a warm feeling as he looked at the flowers and trees in the courtyard. He felt warm even though it was already November. His ice-cold heart had also become warm. June Moxie smiled faintly. He then quietly withdrew. He left Bailey Luoyun to enjoy the taste of home by himself. June Moxie understood this feeling. Therefore, he didn't want to disturb him. Bailey Luoyun rushed out after a while. He had an excited look on his face. He saw June Moxie, and suddenly straightened his body. Then, he solemnly knelt down with a solemn look on his face. June Moxie supported Bailey Luoyun with his left hand. Then, he raised his hand and propped him up. Bailey Luoyun was about to kneel down. June Moxie then said in a gentle voice, "What are you doing?" I've arranged everything for you since you've followed me. I've made sure that you don't have to worry about anything. This is a matter of course. You don't need to do this. I want an arm to work for me, not a worm that kowtows to me." Then, he forcibly pulled Bailey Luo Yun up. "Perhaps young master feels that it's only right and proper. But it's a great favor for me," Bailey Luo Yun said in a serious manner. He looked at June Moxie with reverence in his eyes for the first time. However, there was also a bit of respect in his eyes. "That's not necessary. Luo Yun, you're a sensible man. So, I don't need to say much. You understand. Let's get straight to the point. I'll be frank with you. I won't do this for you if you, Bailey Luo Yun, are useless. As for you, you have to recognize that your value is not as simple as a house. We must move unhindered across the world together. What I need is your ability. Remember what I've said before. This is the only time. There won't be a next time," June Moxie said slowly. His words were spoken slowly and plainly. In fact, they were very unpleasant to hear. However, Bailey Luo Yun knew that this was the truth, and it was the most pleasant to hear. Everyone hoped that good fortune would fall on their heads. But they never thought that. You don't have anything. So, why would so many good things happen to you? You don't have any ability. You can't do anything. So, why would you expect others to do anything for you? This is the same reason why someone would give a gift to an official, but they wouldn't give a gift to an old farmer. That's because an official can get things done, but an old farmer can't. Of course, it's a different matter if you fancy the old farmer's beautiful daughter. But understanding is one thing. Being able to say it is another thing. Being able to say it is another thing. And being able to do it is another thing. Which rich and powerful family doesn't have 100 or more talented people? Even the wealthiest person in the world would have died if everyone was given a courtyard and a maid. And they would have been so generous. The June family has so many talented experts. So, why are they taking care of me? Could it be that I, Bailey Luo Yun, am more useful than those old foxes? Or even those Earth Xian experts like Tian Xian? Even Bailey Luo Yun wasn't confident in this aspect. Therefore, Bailey Luo Yun nodded heavily. He didn't show his emotions on his face. Instead, he resolutely said, "I understand. Not bad. It seems that your Xian Qi has advanced by another level. You were at the peak of Yu Xian the last time I saw you. But you're at the peak of the primary Earth Xian level now, right? You're only one step away from advancing to the intermediate Earth Xian level. This rate of progress is godly." June Moxie sized him up. Then, he asked in a somewhat astonished manner. "This is all thanks to the young master's divine pill. I broke through the bottleneck of Yu Xian level in an instant after I ate it, and I ascended to the Earth Xian level. Then, I circulated my Xian Qi to absorb the power of the pill. Even I couldn't believe it when I finished absorbing it. It was only the power of one pill. But it was able to make me advance by so much. It's truly a divine pill." Bailey Luo Yun seemed very excited as he talked about this matter. He recalled the time when his body had started to emit a hazy yellow light. His hands and feet had started to tremble in excitement, and he couldn't help but blush. "How could the young master's divine pill increase your strength by 10 years? It's a divine pill that can make a breakthrough." June Moxie opened his eyes wide. He then opened his mouth, but he was left speechless. What kind of person has such a life? Many people have taken the 10 years pill before, but none of them have made such a terrifying advancement. But this guy has advanced by taking a 10 years pill. Moreover, he's reached the next bottleneck. It seems that he'll reach the intermediate Earth Xian level very soon. This is too fast. Of course, this kind of astonishing progress was still far from being comparable to June Moxie's leap of 7 or 8 levels. But June Moxie understood this in his heart. I've been able to leap more than 10 levels in one go because I have the Hongjun Pagoda. This is the ultimate cheating tool. Moreover, my body is constantly being transformed by the spirit qi. But Bailey Luoyun doesn't have anything. He's only relying on his innate talent. But this kind of innate talent is too abnormal. This kind of innate talent is worth investing in. The only bad thing about this kid is that he can't follow orders without any mistakes. But these rules need to be established bit by bit. The canal will be formed when the time comes. This is the new task I'm giving you. You'll be in charge of these training exercises in the coming days. You'll develop your body in an all-round way. Jun Moxie handed over a few pieces of paper to Bailey Luoyun. The paper was filled with drawings of the human body's postures and explanations. Each and every one of these postures was strange. In fact, they were beyond the limits of the human body. Bailey Luoyun's eyes lit up as he looked at them. An ordinary person would have thought that these postures were unimaginable. They would have been impossible to achieve. However, Bailey Luoyun was a martial arts genius. So, he possessed an extremely powerful comprehension ability. He could see that these postures contained boundless potential with a single glance. This was the best gift for Bailey Luoyun since he was extremely eager to improve his strength. Bailey Luoyun had killed many people along the way. So, he had gradually fallen in love with this kind of exhilarating feeling. However, he would only be able to enjoy this kind of exhilarating feeling for a long time if his strength was strengthened step by step. Therefore, Bailey Luoyun didn't hesitate to accept the task. This is a list of names. You must remember the names of the people on it. You must go out and kill one person after every 3 days of training. A cruel glint flashed in Jun Moxie's eyes. It's up to you to decide who you want to kill. These people are all our enemies. But there's no need to hurry. You can take your time to clean them up. You don't need to be in a hurry. Do you understand? Jun Moxie said slowly. Bailey Luoyun nodded in a dignified manner. He then carefully placed the paper in his bosom. I hope that you'll be able to reach the peak of the Earthxian realm in 3 months. Jun Moxie clasped his hands behind his back. He then turned around and walked away. Then, he left behind these words, I'll help you break through the Earthxian realm at that time. You'll reach the peak of the Tianxian primary level, or even higher. I hope that you won't disappoint me. Bailey Luoyun's body trembled. His eyes emitted a blazing radiance. Jun Moxie heard the distant sound of Guan Qinghan's flute when he returned to the small courtyard. It seemed as if she was weeping and complaining. However, she still felt a heavy pressure. In fact, it seemed as if she couldn't bear such a heavy burden. Jun Moxie sighed and shook his head. Then, his gaze fell on the 2 crazed figures in the small courtyard. They were the 2 crippled youngsters who had bitten off their own fingers to write a letter of blood. These 2 youngsters had lost their tongues. And one of them had lost an arm. Moreover, he had lost his right arm. Jun Moxie had given them a training method before he had left for the southern heaven region. However, he had doubled the amount of training that they could endure at their age. These 2 youngsters' bones weren't very good. So, they wouldn't necessarily have a future even if they practiced martial arts with all their heart and soul. Therefore, Jun Moxie wanted them to back off in the face of difficulties. However, what surprised Jun Moxie was that these 2 skinny youngsters could be blown away by a gust of wind. However, they had persevered. Moreover, they had automatically increased the amount of training by 4 times. If the Heaven Destroyer and Spirit Devourer teams were using their limits to train themselves, then these 2 youngsters were using their lives to train every day. Unless they died during the training, they would not fall behind in the task of training by 4 times. As long as they felt that they had recovered even a little bit of strength, they would immediately throw themselves back into training. 3 months were like 1 day. The wooden stakes that Jun Moxie had buried for them had been broken by them several times. Now, as Jun Moxie watched them train themselves, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Surprise. This was the surprise that belonged to the evil monarch. Da Xiao was also a human. Even though he had 2 lifetimes of experience, even though he had a cheating tool like the Hongjun Pagoda, he was still a human. He would also be surprised by things that exceeded his expectations. These 2 11 or 12-year-old youngsters were abnormally frail. However, when they fought, they were like 2 wolves fighting each other. 2 hungry wolves. There wasn't a trace of hesitation. There wasn't any mercy. Every punch and every kick was aimed at a fatal spot. Often, when one of them was kicked down, he would twitch on the ground for a long time. As for the other, he just watched from the side with a cold and emotionless gaze. Not to mention helping the other, it was already good enough if he didn't kick the other a few times. As for the injured one who fell to the ground, he would immediately jump up and fight again as soon as he recovered a little. Then, the 2 of them would be beaten black and blue every day. Even their throats, genitals, and chests were the targets of these 2 youngsters. If he didn't care about attacking these places, he would really end up killing people. They knew that the 2 of them should help each other, but now was not the time for them to help each other. Now was the time for life and death. If they couldn't endure the current training, then they would die in the hands of others in the future. If that was the case, then they might as well die in the hands of their own brothers now. The 2's training was simply shocking. If these 2 children were to be compared with Bailey Luoyun, other than the huge difference in aptitude, their killing intent was not much different. Especially their cruel nature, which was even more prominent. All 3 of them had the character of an assassin that Jun Moxie had identified. The 3 great assassins. Grandpa Jun had come to see them once before. When he returned to his study, the horror had yet to subside. In the words of Grandpa Jun, these 2 youngsters are simply not human. For an old general who had spent his entire life on the battlefield to be shocked to such an extent, it could be seen how ruthlessly these 2 youngsters had trained before Jun Moxie left. His small courtyard was still clean. Moreover, after experiencing the fierce pressure from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the ground had transformed into something harder than steel. However, when he returned this time, he found that the ground had become filled with countless potholes. Although the degree of change was not that great, it was still damaged. And this destruction was obviously caused by these 2 little fellows using their own bodies. This kind of hard ground that would not even leave a mark on with a hammer had been turned into such a state by these 2 youngsters in 3 months of training. From this, it could be seen how demanding they were on their training. Jun Moxie sighed. He clapped his hands and said, "The 2 of you, come here." When the 2 youngsters approached, Jun Moxie was surprised to find that these 2 youngsters had grown taller. Their muscles had also hardened. Their eyes were filled with indifference towards their own lives, causing Jun Moxie to feel even more surprised. The 2 of them knelt down at the same time and kowtowed. This was their usual etiquette when they saw the eldest young master. The eldest young master had warned them not to do so, but the 2 of them refused to change. The eldest young master also knew that the 2 of them were stubborn, so he simply let them be. "Get up, I want to see how much your bodies have been trained." Jun Moxie stretched out his hand, and used his spiritual sense to explore the meridians of the 2 men. He sighed softly. It was true that these 2 youngsters had trained very hard. No one could deny that their bodies' strength and coordination had greatly improved during this period of time. However, the innate limitations of these 2 youngsters were still there. Their aptitudes and Bailey Luoyun's were 2 extremes. The difference was like heaven and earth, like the difference between cloud and mud. Jun Moxie felt that it was necessary for him to refine the medicine again. Da Xiao took out 2 10-years pills from his bosom and said, "Take them. Then, practice according to the Xian Qi circulation." With their aptitudes and the foundation that they had built up in 3 months, they would suffer a great deal of pain if they used the 10-years pills rashly. In fact, they would suffer 10 times more pain than an ordinary person would. However, after Jun Moxie had seen their training, he knew that these two youngsters were born to be ruthless. Others might not be able to endure it, but these two youngsters were definitely not a problem. Sure enough, after the two of them took the pills, there was a reaction in a very short period of time. They had only started cultivating their Xian Qi for 3 months, and their Xian Qi was only at the 2nd or 3rd level. At best, they were at the same level as when Dashao had just crossed over to this world. However, this 10 years pill was a heaven-defying pill that even a silver Xian expert would suffer for a long time. However, if they relied on their willpower to endure it, their meridians would expand to an exaggerated extent. The more they endured, the more they would receive. Just like an expert like Xin Xian, it did not matter if he ate the 10 years pill or not. There would not be much of a reaction, and he would be able to absorb 10 years of Xian Qi. However, that was only 10 years of pure Xian Qi. However, with the weak meridians of these two youngsters, if they were able to endure it, it would be tantamount to having an exceptionally valiant start. Even if their aptitudes were poor, it could still be made up for. Under the watchful eyes of Jun Moxie, the muscles of the two youngsters swelled up in pain. Their teeth were clenched so hard that they made grinding noises, but the two of them were still able to endure it without making a single groan. They could only endure it in silence, fighting against this kind of immense pain that even adults in their 20s would find hard to endure. Sweat poured down like rain. Jun Moxie looked at their frail bodies. When he saw their trembling broken arms, Jun Moxie suddenly thought of a blade technique. Left-hand blade. Single-arm blade technique. Each blade was swift and fierce, and each strike was fatal. This blade technique came from a martial arts senior in his previous life. That senior was famous for his blade techniques, and his strength could be said to be unparalleled in the world. Unfortunately, he was ambushed by his enemies and his right hand was chopped off. However, they deliberately did not kill him because he had lost his right hand. His exquisite blade technique was equivalent to crippling himself, and it would be difficult for him to fight again. His enemies intended to turn him into a cripple and bring shame to the world. However, that senior was not discouraged. After pondering over the painful experience, with supreme perseverance, he spent 10 years to create a set of extremely exquisite left-handed saber techniques. After he mastered the blade technique, he returned to the world and killed his enemies with every blade. In the past, when he was at his peak, he was not a match for his enemies. However, when he used this single-arm blade technique, his enemies did not even have the ability to fight back. From this, one could see how domineering this blade technique was. However, the process of practicing this blade technique was extremely dangerous. Each move was reversed and unimaginable. If one was not careful, they could cut themselves at any time. This was because every slash would be made from the most unpredictable angle. While the enemy could not guard against it, the process of practicing would also increase the difficulty of one's own cultivation. But now, this single-arm blade technique was undoubtedly the only hope of this disabled youngster. As for the other one who was able-bodied, Jun Moxie also planned to be creative and teach him a strange sword technique. In this way, once the two of them combined their blade and sword techniques, they would definitely be able to display a terrifying power. The pain of the two little fellows lasted for a full hour. In the end, the two of them only twitched on the ground. They did not even sweat. They clenched their teeth so hard that blood flowed out from the roots of their teeth. Every blood vessel in their body was clearly bulging on the surface of their skin. In the end, when the pain finally subsided, the two of them were still clenching their teeth so hard that their muscles were spasming to the point that they could not open their mouths. Jun Moxie's huge and pure spiritual energy surged into them and helped them relax. Only then did the two finally open their mouths and look at each other. Their eyes were bloodshot from the pain, but their eyes were still filled with unwillingness to accept each other's strength. This is a blade technique. Jun Moxie casually grabbed a single blade and held it in his left hand. He swung it in the air and said, "Watch carefully." The child, who only had his left arm left, immediately had a fervent expression on his face. He focused his attention on every movement of Jun Moxie. His eyes were wide open, and he did not even dare to blink, for fear that he would miss a single move. Jun Moxie practiced it slowly. He secretly circulated his xian qi under his feet and left shallow footprints on the hard ground. Then, he followed those footprints and practiced it 2 more times. He asked, "Do you understand now?" The one-armed child nodded. Their aptitude was really limited. Naturally, he did not understand the blade technique that he had only performed once. He did not even remember many of the moves. However, he understood Jun Moxie's intention very well. He wanted him to practice his blade technique by stepping on the footprints on the ground. After a while, Dashao taught another set of sword technique to the other child and instructed them to practice it well. At this moment, a guard suddenly came to report, "The Dugu family has sent an invitation. They invite third young master to attend a banquet at the Dugu family today." Jun Moxie was stunned. "What? Attend a banquet? What kind of show is this? I have been too busy these days because I have been busy with the gathering. I was drunk the day before yesterday, and didn't have time to write. I actually stopped updating. Luckily, I made up for the minimum update yesterday and today. Although I didn't have full attendance, I still felt quite comforted. After all, after I stopped updating, I made up for 5,600 on the second day, and 1,500 on the third day. Haha, I feel good about myself. For me, who is away from home, to be able to write these words in the midst of the gathering every day, I have to say something narcissistic. I am really awesome. Haha. Chapter 455. Lahem, I've been away from home for the past few days, and I haven't had the time to write. If I don't explode, then I'll be embarrassed to ask for votes. Alas, I've been watching the double monthly votes slip by day, and my ranking has been slipping day by day. My brothers are burning with impatience. I've returned home today, so I've exploded today. I want to make up for the losses of the past few days. Wahaha! Everyone can cast your monthly votes without worry. Tonight, before midnight, 4:00. Could it be that the Dugu family is so anxious to find me in order to discuss my marriage with Dugu Xiaoi? This was the only possibility that Jun Moxie could think of. How would I face this marriage if it's really for this reason? The words on the invitation card were very concise and to the point. There was only one sentence in total. The Jun family's Emosia is invited to the Dugu residence for a meeting. The signature was unexpectedly, Dugu Zongheng awaits quietly. The handwriting was very rough and almost ugly, but the strokes of the writing were full of hostility, bold and uninhibited. It was written by Dugu Zongheng himself. This was an unusually simple invitation card, but it showed the importance and anger of the Dugu family towards this meeting. Old man Dugu Zongheng had personally signed his name. This had clearly explained this point. But the wording was short, and it went straight to the heart of the matter. It was obvious that the Dugu family was extremely reluctant and helpless towards this meeting. Dashao secretly thought, could it be that the Dugu family wants to establish the little girl's status in addition to discussing the marriage between me and the little girl? After all, the little girl had returned home in public with a big belly. This wasn't a joke, but anyone who was observant would be able to see through the strangeness of this matter. How could she have such a big belly when she was only 2 or 3 months old? But no matter what the truth was, the little girl's reputation and integrity were certainly ruined. And this was something that Jun Moxie was quite touched by. The Jun family and the Dugu family were well matched in terms of social status. In fact, they were a perfect match for each other. However, the Dugu family would never allow their only granddaughter to become someone else's concubine. Even if they were well aware that the little girl was still a virgin, and that the young Master Jun's only woman was Guan Qinghan, they wouldn't care about this. Establishing the little girl's status as the first wife was very important. To put it bluntly, although Guan Qinghan had saved Da Xiao with her chastity, she was still Da Xiao's sister-in-law. Even if Da Xiao were to marry her, Guan Qinghan's delicate status would not allow her to become Jun Moxie's first wife. The little girl had always been on good terms with Guan Qinghan. If the little girl became the first wife, and Guan Qinghan became the concubine, it would be a good thing for everyone. Jun Moxie frowned. This should be the reason why the Dugu family is so anxious to find me, right? But no matter what, Dugu Zongheng seems to be looking for the wrong person. He should be looking for Jun Zhantian, not Jun Moxie. After all, Jun Zhantian is the head of the Jun family. Especially when it comes to the marriage of a descendant, Grandpa Jun should be the one to personally take care of it. Moreover, Jun Moxie is not someone that Dugu Zongheng can face directly. His level is not high enough. Even if Da Xiao is in the limelight and has a rampant battle record, his level is still not high enough. This has nothing to do with one's strength. This is the level of worldly wisdom. Da Xiao may be a person of two lives, but he is still a young boy when it comes to worldly wisdom. He is not an expert in this kind of life event. Jun Moxie held the invitation card, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. When Jun Zhantian found out about this, he curled his lips and said disdainfully, "Little grandson, what's so strange about this? It's probably because that old man Dugu Zongheng was roared at by his family's tigress. That's why he has no choice but to do this. I reckon that his family's tigress wants to see you in person. And that old man Dugu Zongheng doesn't dare to refuse you. So, he invites you, but you're unwilling. That's it. I've always seen you as daring as the heavens. But, how come you're so timid today? Well, get out of here. Don't disturb this old man's cultivation." It must be said that Grandpa Jun and Dugu Zongheng had known each other for a lifetime. So, they had a thorough understanding of each other. It only took him a moment to deduce the truth of this matter. This speculation was not only close to the truth, it was completely consistent with the truth. The old man's last sentence mercilessly drove out his paranoid grandson. He then continued to meditate on the Great Way. It was rare to have such an opportunity to make a breakthrough. How could he not stabilize his realm in the shortest time possible? Jun Moxie smiled bitterly. Suddenly, he noticed a thick stack of papers on Grandpa Jun's desk. They were all folded and unfolded. It was obvious that these were all secret reports sent by eagles. The topmost one read, "The county magistrate of Qingshui County of the Western Capital was killed in his home. It is suspected that he was killed by the assassin Lu Yun. The killer only left behind a poem. Good and evil will always be rewarded. Justice cannot be allowed to fall. If you want to find the killer, ask Lu Yun." Jun Zhantian's reply was, "Quickly investigate." The next piece of information was the same. Jun Moxie counted and found that there were exactly 50 of them. Not one more, not one less. It was exactly the information on the 50 people that Bailey Luo Yun had killed. Jun Mo Xie couldn't help but sigh. Such an efficient intelligence system was so outstanding that it left one speechless. Bailey Luo Yun had only just arrived in Tianxiang, but everything he had done had already been gathered here. Moreover, it seemed like Grandpa Jun had already read through it. This meant that this intelligence had arrived even earlier than Bailey Luo Yun. It was a pity that although these intelligence agencies were under the direct control of the Jun family, their true master was the Tianxiang Empire and not the Jun family's own power. If there was a day when the relationship between the Jun family and the Tianxiang Empire was broken, these intelligence agencies would not be of any use. Jun Mo Xie frowned. He put the note back in its original place and slowly walked out. As soon as he came out, he saw the guards at the gate rushing over. Behind them was a grotesquely shaped big fatty. Jun Moxie was shocked. He could barely recognize that this person was Tang Yuan. It had only been 3 months, and this brother had actually put on weight again. Moreover, it wasn't just a little bit. He had put on a lot of weight. Tang Yuan had originally been a circle, but now he had turned into a triangle. His huge head was impressively pointed at the top of his head. Then, it spread down to both sides. Third young master. Tang Yuan became excited as soon as he saw Jun Moxie. He excitedly threw himself at him, gasping for breath as he tried to give him a bear hug. Stop! Jun Moxie was startled. What happened to you? How did you gain so much weight? He looked him up and down. Then, he frowned. I could clearly see your calves before. But now I can't even see your feet. Ahem, don't mention it. Tang Yuan looked like he couldn't bear to look back. Brother, it's been tough these days. I've been forced to lose weight. What? Forced to lose weight? Jun Moxie finally cried out in surprise. Forced to lose weight actually reduced you from 300 pounds to 400 pounds? Wrong. Tang Yuan sternly pointed out Jun Moxie's mistake. If it was 400 pounds, perhaps I wouldn't be so depressed. This time, it was from 360 pounds. Now, it's 524 pounds. IF*CK. Jun Moxie's mouth was agape. After a long time, he cried out, from 360 pounds to 524 pounds in 3 months, a full 160 pounds. Damn it, even if I fed hormones to pigs, they wouldn't be able to gain so much weight in 3 months. Feed pigs. Tang Yuan said unhappily. I have a special reason for this. What special reason? Could it be? Jun Moxie blinked. It had to be said that the word fat couldn't be used to describe Fatty Tang's current physique. It should be called terrifying. Sun Xiaomei has been forcing me to lose weight every day. Tang Yuan wanted to cry but had no tears. Every morning she would take a whip and wake me up to run. Every day she would make me go out to exercise. Nobody in the family is on my side. Everyone is rushing to cooperate with that woman. Why is my life so bitter? Even in the aristocratic hall, there are people following and supervising me. I still don't understand. It's a very normal and effective way to lose weight. Why are you doing it? Jun Moxie was even more puzzled. Big brother, I do exercise. But I get hungry afterward. I'm very hungry. Tang Yuan gritted his teeth and shouted. I get hungry every time I exercise. I used to eat 3 meals a day before I lost weight. I could eat 6 steamed buns per meal. But now I have to eat 9 meals a day. I have to eat 10 steamed buns per meal. And that's not counting supper. Jun Moxie's body swayed and he almost fell down. His face was full of black lines. What kind of person is this? The legendary envoy of the pure altar doesn't seem to be like this, right? Indeed, there's a reason to be fat. Jun Moxie nodded repeatedly. He had a look of amazement on his face. No wonder such a big miracle happened in these 3 short months. There's a reason for it. It's such a powerful reason. It would be strange if you don't get fat. That's right. Tang Yuan sighed and stroked his belly. I used to be able to carry my own belly. But I can't carry it anymore. It seems that you still need to exercise further. Jun Moxie sighed. I still need to exercise? If I were to continue training, I would have broken through 600 gene. Tang Yuan unhappily rolled his eyes, but then became excited again. However, third young master, we have truly created a miracle. In these past 3 months, every single one of your pills has been auctioned for a sky-high price. Moreover, the current record is still being broken. Now, the few bottles of medicine that you left for me before you left have already turned into 900 million shining silver taels. Moreover, this money belongs to the aristocratic hall. The young prince's share isn't included. He's already given away his share. What? 900 million? 900 million? Jun Moxie was thoroughly shocked by this huge number. Da Xiao wasn't someone who hadn't seen money before. He had known that those pills would be very popular in this world. But he hadn't expected that they would be so popular. I can refine 8 or 10 bottles of those pills at any time. So, I can make hundreds of millions of silver taels with just a flick of my finger? Isn't this world too crazy? Is it so exaggerated? Chapter 456. Explode today. Second update. Third update in progress. Fourth update in progress. Isn't it just a pill? We have plenty of that stuff. June Moxie curled his lips in disdain. Sell it. The more popular it is, the better. I'm relieved to hear that. I've named this bone-tempering pill Reconstruct the Bones of the Entire Body, Reconstruct the Muscles and Meridians, and Advance in an Instant. It's the dream medicine of every profound practitioner. How about it? Isn't it cool? Now, our pills can no longer be described as expensive. Firstly, the effects of your pills are 2F** King Miraculous. Secondly, I, your brother, have also put in some effort. Under my painstaking efforts, the pills we produce have directly become the divine medicine that everyone yearns for. Fatty Tang smiled. His belly slapped the ground. He was overjoyed as he said, I've designed another line for this new pill. Listen to it. Are you still worried about your mediocre aptitude? Are you still worried that you can't compare to your peers no matter how hard you try? Are you still worried that you can't advance in an instant? Are you still worried that you can't become a strong practitioner? Come, please take the Reconstruct the Bones of the Entire Body, Reconstruct the Muscles and Meridians, and Advance in an Instant. It's the dream medicine of every profound practitioner. Take it and you'll be a genius for the rest of your life. Come, come. What are you waiting for? Opportunity knocks, but it won't come again. The divine medicine will be auctioned for only 7 days. Don't let your life be filled with regrets. How about it? Not bad, right? Tang Yuan spoke in a proud manner. Then, he saw that June Mosie's eyes were fixated on him. Fatty Tang. You're actually from Earth? Damn it. Why didn't you say so earlier? June Moxie suddenly grabbed his shoulder. His eyes were brimming with tears. What? Earth? What ball? Tang Yuan was startled. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You're the ball. Damn it. I have no choice. Who wants to be so King fat? I don't want to be fat either. So it's not. June Moxie sighed in disappointment. But you're too King talented. You can even think of such a creative advertising slogan. If you really go to Earth, you will definitely be a genius in the advertising industry. Advertising words? Yes. Only by publicizing it will we be able to sell well. Tang Yuan suddenly understood the meaning of these 2 words. He couldn't help but look at June Moxie with admiration. Third young master, you are really too talented. Just a casual sentence contains the truth. This brother's admiration for you is like the surging waters of a great river. The moment I see you, my mood is like the surging waves of the sea in the midst of a gale. F***ck. Don't talk nonsense. How are you going to sell this thing? What do you think is a suitable base price? June Dashao waved his hand, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. I'm afraid that the efficacy of this pill is even greater than those elixirs from before. I'll auction 2 pills at once. The base price is 500,000 taels of silver. Tang Yuan revealed a black-hearted smile. He stretched out 5 fingers and said, My preliminary estimate is that it can be raised to at least 5 million taels of silver. You must know that the invitation for this auction is aimed at the aristocratic families with Xian skills. This is what they need the most. June Moxie was completely speechless. He suddenly felt that the person standing in front of him was an out-and-out black-hearted profiteer. 2 small pills, and this bastard actually wants to sell them for a sky-high price of 5 million taels of silver. Moreover, these 2 pills are not that important to me. One must know that in this world, 10 taels of silver is enough for a family of 3 to live comfortably for half a year. This period of time is really King satisfying. It's too satisfying. Tang Yuan's eyes were filled with the radiance of silver. I've always dreamt of this kind of life. I would wait comfortably, and then I would only care about counting the shining white taels of silver. Damn it, I didn't expect that I wouldn't be able to count the taels of silver. Instead, I would count the silver notes. I count the silver notes every day until my hand cramps. It's really satisfying. I count them by myself every night. And I count them until the middle of the night. It's so refreshing. You are too great. Jun Moxie was utterly defeated. He had never thought that he would be left speechless by someone one day. Moreover, the aristocratic hall's income wouldn't even need to be exchanged for silver. Even if it were exchanged for 10 or even 100 taels of silver, it would still be enough for Fatty to lose weight in one night. After all, it would be enough to fill a room full of silver. And Tang Yuan's body would lose at least a few dozen kilograms of flesh if he didn't die from exhaustion after counting the taels of silver. This guy won't be able to eat it back no matter how much he eats. Huh. Jun Moxie had just thought of this when he suddenly thought of an excellent method to help Tang Yuan lose weight. And the corners of his mouth couldn't help but reveal an extremely evil smile. Tang Yuan was standing beside him when he suddenly shivered. It seems that someone is scheming against me? Forget it. How many people have been scheming against me these days? I have an expert like Song Shang to protect me. So, why would I care about other people's schemes? Fatty muttered twice. Ah, Fatty. Tell all the participating buyers that they must use silver or gold for this transaction. Don't accept silver notes. The auction will be delayed for 10 days. That way, everyone will have enough time to mobilize their funds. Jun Moxie suddenly thought of his own power of gold. It would be better to use other metals to temper the blood of Yellow Flame. Moreover, it would also help Fatty lose weight. What? Cash transaction? Gold? Tang Yuan fainted. Third young master, what do you want this for? That's a huge lump of gold. I have a great use for it. Do as I say. Jun Moxie said in a serious manner. Well, you must have your reasons. I'll go and take care of it. Fatty Tang was somewhat puzzled. But, he still readily agreed. But, third young master, you must help me with something first. What is it? It's that bitch, Sun Xiaomei. You don't know this, but I gave half a bottle to Sun Xiaomei. It's the kind of pill that you gave me for women to take, and I've already finished it. But, the problem appeared after I finished it. Tang Yuan heaved a long sigh. What's going on? Is there a side effect? Jun Moxie's interest was immediately piqued. Looking at Tang Yuan's expression, it didn't seem to be anything good. Ai, that pill is indeed very effective. That bitch's figure has become slimmer. She can even be compared to Princess Raimu. But the problem now is that her face is even uglier. Tang Yuan wanted to cry, but he had no tears to shed. He said, Third young master, you don't know this. Sun Xiaomei can charm thousands of soldiers and horses just by looking at her back. She can then turn around and scare away millions of soldiers. This kind of comparison makes me fall apart. Especially when I think about how she's going to be my future wife. I'm falling apart even more. Face? How is it ugly? Jun Moxie was very puzzled. That minor Een pill was best at nourishing one's Een and nourishing one's face. How could it make one's face ugly? This was contrary to common sense. Little May, when she was young, she ate something unknown. Then, she suddenly became uglier and uglier, more and more out of shape. AI, in any case, it's the kind that's hard to explain. But ever since she took your pill, her body has changed more and more. It seems that even her bones have become slender. And more slender. I saw that it was effective, so I used my power for personal gain and left her half a bottle. Tang Yuan somewhat embarrassedly looked at Jun Moxie and scratched his head. After a few days, every time I look at her back, I find that she's really becoming more and more enchanting. It's really too beautiful. But her face is becoming uglier and uglier. There are lumps and abscesses, and there are also blisters and whatnot. Third young master, you don't know the pain in my heart. Such a good figure. It's really a pity. When Jun Moxie heard this, he also understood. It seemed that Sun Xiaomei's original sturdy figure was not completely formed innately. It should be that after she ate something, intentionally or unintentionally, it destroyed the yin and yang balance in her body. Therefore, everything develops somewhat in a masculine way. But now, the minor yin pill that he refined was the nemesis of this kind of thing. As a result, Fatty Tang accidentally forced the toxins out of Sun Xiaomei's body. But because he didn't use it properly, the toxins that accumulated over the years were automatically transferred and forced onto her face. As a result, her face was too horrible to look at. This created the current delicate situation of looking at the back makes you want to commit a crime, looking at the side makes you want to retreat, and looking at the front makes you want to defend yourself. Don't worry, I'll go take a look later. I believe it's not a big deal. Later, I'll return you a beautiful wife. But Fatty, you have to be careful. What if Sun Xiaomei becomes beautiful and kicks you? Ah! Tang Yuan was shocked and said, if third young master didn't mention it, I really wouldn't have noticed it. If that's the case, with that woman's fierce personality, it's really possible. Should we not treat it? He thought about it and said in distress, but if we don't treat it, this face of hers is too unappealing. Sigh, let me think of a way for you. Jun Moxie comforted him, and then rolled his eyes. But, Fatty, even blood brothers should settle accounts clearly. Tell me honestly, if nothing happens to your wife, do you plan to let this matter of you abusing your power for personal gain go? Tang Yuan rolled his eyes. You also know the rules of our hall. According to the highest market price of each pill, the price will be doubled and directly deducted from your shares. Jun Moxie said mercilessly, if this kind of situation happens again in the future, all your shares will be confiscated. Don't, third young master. That silver, shining white silver. That silver is my life. You're plotting against your brother's life. We're brothers. Tang Yuan miserably screamed. It was as if someone had dug out his heart and liver. His heart and liver were in great pain. Snot and tears flowed down his face as he complained, you can't do this. You're too cruel, sob sob. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that after extorting the whole world in high spirits, it would be his turn to be extorted the moment Jun Moxie returned. Could this be karma? Then make your choice. Do you want the wife or the silver? Jun Moxie walked forward with his hands behind his back, ignoring Fatty's pleas. Chapter 457. Today's explosion. The third update has arrived. Isn't that enough? Jun Moxie glared at him fiercely. Don't think that I don't know that you're stuffing your own pockets. This is only a small lesson. A bottle of 100 pills is worth 1 million silver taels. You've used 50 of them. That's a whole bottle. You'll have to obediently spit out 100 million silver taels. Plop. Tang Yuan fell to the ground, foaming at the mouth, and twitching. Jun Moxie ignored him and said, I'll count to 3. If you don't get up by then, I'll double it. It doesn't matter how long you're unconscious as long as you have the money to pay. This time, Jun Moxie didn't even have time to count when Tang Yuan jumped up with incomparable agility. You don't need to go through the trouble of counting. I'll admit it, okay? Third young master, you're really ruthless. You want 100 million. I don't even have 300 million. Tang Yuan gritted his teeth and spoke with incomparable resentment. Then, he realized that he had made a slip of the tongue. What? 300 million? Damn it. Damn it. Tang Yuan, you're really arrogant. You've eaten your fill. I'll F***ck you. You embezzled 300 million for yourself. I'll give you 2 choices now. First, spit out the 300 million you've embezzled. Second, accompany me to the Dugu family tonight. June Moxie looked as if he wanted to eat someone alive. According to this guy's shares, he had 20%. The aristocratic hall had 900 million silver taels. So, Tang Yuan had 180 million silver taels. June Moxie hadn't expected that this fatty would be able to secretly amass a net worth of 300 million silver taels. In the entire Tianxiang Empire, there might not be many people with such a terrifying net worth. June Moxie wouldn't feel comfortable in his heart if he didn't exploit such a fat pig. Isn't it easy to choose? We're brothers. So, I'll go wherever you go. Even if it's a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, I won't shirk my duty. Isn't it just the Dugu family? Damn it. Huh. The Dugu family. Tang Yuan patted his chest passionately and hurriedly promised. Only after he finished speaking did he realize that he was talking about the Dugu family. He couldn't help but shiver and put on a bitter face. Third young master, it's not that I'm not loyal, but I really have something to do tonight that I must deal with. Really? I believe I can act at my own discretion. I also believe that you will accompany me. June Moxie chuckled. I really have something to do. I really can't delay it. When Fatty saw Dashao's smile, he thought that things had taken a turn for the better. Since you have something to do, I won't force you. 300 million. June Moxie extended 3 fingers. Elder brother, that matter of mine is a trivial matter. It's too insignificant. Accompanying you to the Dugu family is the proper business. So, how can I say no? I'll go, okay? Damn it. I'll sell my fat to the Dugu family. Don't tell me that they'll eat me? Tang Yuan's face was solemn and stirring as if he had died a martyr's death. That's more like it. I almost thought that you really have something to do. June Moxie clapped his hands and said with a smile, that being the case, then the 100 million. Tang Yuan's spirit was shaken. I'll even be exempted from this 100 million if I accompany June Moxie to the Dugu family. How good would that be? It would be worth it even if I were to be abused at the Dugu family. He looked at June Moxie with a look of expectation. Then, he heard June Dashao say, let's talk about it tomorrow. I don't think that the Dugu family will be able to eat your fat. Tang Yuan fiercely swallowed a mouthful of saliva with a gulp sound. It was still early. So, June Moxie arranged for Tang Yuan to wait in his courtyard. Then, he told him to accompany Yi Gohan to chat. Then, he slipped away. That was because chatting with Yi Gohan was a very difficult task. That was because this guy always talked to himself. He didn't pay attention to anyone. And when he started talking excitedly, it was not enough even if there was no audience. He was going to get angry. He was now a cripple whose Xian Qi had been completely destroyed. If they were to talk about fighting, even Fatty might not be able to beat him. But could you really bear to make a move on a cripple? You can't have the heart to attack. So, you have to listen. Therefore, June Moxie had pushed Tang Yuan to the front. Fatty Tang had been very excited at first. After all, Yi Gohan was a passionate dream that had been circulating among the youths of the capital. Yi Gohan's persistence, Yi Gohan's deep affection, and Yi Gohan's legend. However, Tang Yuan had regretted it in less than 5 minutes. Yi Gohan was clearly immersed in his own world. He was narrating his story over and over again. In fact, it seemed as if he was speaking to himself from beginning to end. He didn't care whether or not anyone was listening to him. He was only responsible for speaking. However, Yi Gohan wouldn't be happy if Fatty left. So, he would glare at him and start cursing. Don't look at the fact that Fatty was a cripple. His curses were full of vigor. Tang Yuan wanted to cry but had no tears. He had paid 100 million taels of silver and promised third young master to accompany him to the Dugu family, the nightmare of everyone in the capital. In exchange, he was chatting with an emotional lunatic. There was no justice in the world. Finally, The whooshing sound of blades and swords attracted Yigohan's attention. Yigohan stood up and looked out the window. Then, he couldn't take his eyes off it. Then, he walked out quickly. Outside, two children were practicing martial arts. One was practicing with a blade, the other with a sword. Their movements were immature and not practiced at all. It was obvious that they had just started learning martial arts. But, the one who really attracted Yigohan's attention was the child who was using a blade. That child was using a left-handed blade. Moreover, it was the purest one-armed blade technique, because there were several blades that were sliced along the right arm. If the child had a right arm, it would have been chopped off by his blade. Yigohan was a martial arts expert. Naturally, he could tell at a glance that this set of saber techniques must have been created by a one-armed powerhouse. Otherwise, no one in the world would be able to create such a crippling blade technique. But, his right arm was also chopped off. He was also a cripple who could only move his left arm. Ever since he lost his right arm, Yigohan knew that he was finished. He had spent his life with a sword. Now that he lost his right arm, his exquisite swordsmanship would be crippled. Moreover, although he was lucky enough to survive that upheaval, the meridians in his body were congested and messed up. Tianxian could no longer use his power. A series of blows caused Yigohan to gradually despair. But this time, Yigohan suddenly found a new hope. Others were able to create this blade technique with their left arm. They must have thought of it after they were injured. Why can't I create another blade technique that is suitable for my own left hand? In this way, if I can perfectly match the profound meaning of the unconventional sword technique, won't it be even more powerful? Yigohan just looked at the stubborn young man who was constantly practicing with the blade. He kept swinging the blade, over and over again. He was actually mesmerized by it. The young man who was practicing with the blade practiced again and again, but he seemed to be unable to grasp the main point. Just as he was feeling distressed, he heard someone say, "This move should be like this." Then, a hand took his blade and used the previous move. Compared to what he had practiced, it was so much more profound and proficient than what he had practiced. Moreover, this person was also using his left hand. Looking back, that person was Yigohan. Yigohan's face exuded an exceptionally fanatical radiance. He looked at the blade in his hand, and his eyes gradually turned red. He calmly placed the blade against his face after a long while. He said in a low voice, "Thank you. Thank you for letting me know that I'm still useful. I'm still not a complete waste." Then, he stood up and stood perfectly straight. The pride and heroic spirit of killing thousands of miles away had once again returned to his body. When June Moxie arrived, Guan Qinghan was obviously a little flustered, and she was even more at a loss. "How have you been these days?" June Moxie smiled and sat down on the chair beside her. "It's all right." Guan Qinghan smiled gently. "Actually, there are some things that we always think of as excessively scary when we haven't faced them. But when it really comes to our own heads, and when we really confront it, we will find that it isn't necessarily very scary. In fact, there is no obstacle in this world that can't be overcome. Everything was as fake as **t. When you are no longer afraid, it will be even easier." June Moxie thought deeply and said, "This time is no exception, understand? Yes, I really didn't expect this, and I never dared to have such an extravagant hope that this matter would pass in such a way." Guan Qinghan gently nodded and said with a sad smile, "I originally thought that I would never be able to overcome this obstacle. At least, I wouldn't be able to overcome it." "No, this matter isn't over yet." June Moxie smiled, "because you haven't completely overcome your own obstacle. Right now, the third uncle is preparing for the grand ceremony of receiving his daughter. The third uncle wants to officially announce this matter to the world. Afterwards, because Guan Qinghan will be the daughter of the June family, and will no longer be the eldest granddaughter-in-law. If anyone dares to use this matter to cause trouble, then they will become the Jun family's mortal enemy. And, if they become the Jun family's mortal enemy, then they will have to accept the fate of being ruthlessly annihilated. Foster father is very considerate. Guanqing Han was moved and sighed. She looked at Jun Moxie with her bright eyes and said, "But you don't think things through properly. Why do you say that?" Jun Moxie stared blankly. "I heard that Mei Gaojie and Kong Lingyang were killed. Did you do it?" Guanqing Han looked at him in a somewhat reproachful manner. Those two old gentlemen were somewhat pedantic. But they were very upright people. Moreover, they were brilliant in literature and had a straightforward temperament. They had devoted their entire lives to the country. So, it's too much to kill such good people. Hee hee. You still don't understand. Sometimes, especially when good people were doing bad things, no matter what their original intentions were, the impact they caused would always be huge. The better the character of such rotten scholars, the greater the disaster they will cause. They will directly or indirectly hinder the progress of the entire human race. You won't understand what I'm talking about. Jun Moxie heaved a long sigh. He couldn't help but think of his beloved motherland. Chapter 458. The four great inventions of ancient China were brilliant, the 100 schools of thought flourished, the Qin and Han dynasties were tyrannical, the proud son of heaven Genghis Khan had almost conquered the entire world. But in the days that followed, the arrogance of the corrupt scholars and the narrow-minded thinking of the heavenly empire had led to the country's seclusion. The foreign enemies had advanced by leaps and bounds, but they only knew how to remain stagnant. They had allowed others to take their inventions and strengthen them, and then use them to attack them. They had finally suffered a great loss. This had also led to the current backwardness of the country, be it in terms of military or economy. They were struggling to catch up with others, and were not ahead of the world. All these causes and effects were due to the contributions of those learned scholars. Were these people bad people? No. Each of them was upright and self-restrained, and their temperaments were old-fashioned and arrogant. Their characters were unquestionable, and they were all good people. But they were the main culprits of the backwardness of the country. Jun Moxie would sigh every time he thought of that sad and helpless history. The disasters that good people brought to the world were far greater than the bad people. What kind of logic was this? If this was said, the vast majority of people would be flabbergasted and unable to believe it. But this was the truth of a period of time. It was an indelible fact. Just like Mei Gaojie and Kong Lingyang, were they good people? Yes. This was something that no one could deny, not even the young master. But, because of the deeds of these two good people, because of the deeds that they thought would be passed down through the ages, millions of people in Tianxiang had suffered. What kind of standard should be used to evaluate the merits and demerits? Jun Moxie was somewhat disappointed and murmured, "Perhaps it is just a change in perspective. In fact, everyone's actions in their own eyes are 100% correct. Who could have thought it through so thoroughly? If one really wants to take care of everything, the only way is to do nothing. But those who do nothing are only mediocre. So, we just need to abide by our hearts." Jun Moxie said seriously, "There is no need to think about these useless things. In this world, no one can interfere with our decisions. Not a single person. So don't worry, I won't make you sad, and I won't let them have an easy time either." Guanqing Han sighed softly. What Jun Moxie said seemed to be right and wrong. It seemed to make sense, but it also seemed to be full of deviance. In short, he only understood half of it. "Let's not talk about this first. What brings you here today?" Guanqing Han forced herself to ask. "Nothing special. I heard you playing the flute just now, so I wanted to come and see you. However, after visiting Grandpa's study room, I was a little confused." Jun Moxie briefly explained the Jun family's intelligence network. "Then," he added, "our current situation is in opposition to the imperial family. If some of our guesses are true, I'm afraid that we will have to fight to the death. At that time, these people would definitely become a huge hidden danger. I'm having a headache. How can an intelligence network be so complicated? I see. Guan Qinghan frowned and thought for a while. Then, she said, if the Jun family and the imperial family stand on opposite sides, then how will the imperial family deal with these people who originally belonged to the Jun family? Will they trust these people? I don't think they will. They can only kill these people. They would rather kill the wrong people than let them off. And with the current emperor's degree of suspicion, this is even more so. That's right. Big Sister's words are really like a wake-up call. Jun Moxie only felt his eyes light up. He laughed and said, I'm the one who is involved in the situation, so I can't see clearly. The imperial family will not allow them to exist. In fact, they are even more suspicious of me. I've finally figured it out. This is a lot easier. Haha, it's all thanks to my wife. Guan Qinghan suddenly blushed. She heard that the first half of this guy's sentence was very serious. She was happy for him. She didn't expect this guy to say the last sentence. Who's your wife? Don't talk nonsense. Guan Qinghan angrily rebuked. She suddenly felt so ashamed that she couldn't show her face. Her whole body felt a little hot. I'm my wife, okay? Ha ha. Jun Moxie laughed and walked away, leaving Guan Qinghan angrily stamping her feet. She finally calmed down after a long time. But her face was still red. The sun was setting in the west. Jun Moxie carried the gift box. He was accompanied by Fatty Tang. He was accompanied by a few guards. They were escorted in the direction of the Dugu family. Tang Dashao was sitting in a soft bag. He was swaying as he followed Jun Moxie. Soft bags were meant for traveling in the summer. But Tang Dashao was the only one in the entire continent who would sit in a soft bag in the middle of winter. Not to mention Tianxiang City, however, Tang Yuan couldn't do anything about it. His body was growing larger by the day, and the original sedan at home couldn't be used anymore. He hadn't even gotten a new one out yet. The last time he went out in the sedan, he suddenly fell out of the sedan with a plop before he could even walk half the distance. He fell to the ground in a daze. The sedan's chassis couldn't bear his terrifying weight, and couldn't bear the burden. Jun Moxie felt that it was urgent to help Fatty lose weight. If he continued to gain weight at this rate, then he would probably die of obesity. If he was fat before, then it was normal. But now, he was obese. In fact, he was in the middle or late stages of obesity. This was terrible. His life would be in danger at any moment. Unfortunately, there were no weight loss pills in the Hongjun Pagoda. This made Jun Moxie very helpless. Do I really have to use a knife to peel off all the fat from Fatty's body? The four bearers were already drenched in sweat by the time they reached the door of the Dugu family. They were gasping for breath. When Tang Dashao finally struggled to get down from the palanquin, the four bearers felt as if they were going to collapse at any moment. Carrying a palanquin for others was a way to earn money. But carrying a palanquin for this young master was simply asking for their lives. For a moment, the four bearers felt the urge to resign. Fatty's weight was growing at a terrifying rate. He was around 150 pounds just a few days ago. Although he was much heavier than the average person, the four bearers could still accept it. After all, Fatty's salary wasn't low. In fact, it was 3 times that of his peers. Although the 4 of them were tired, they still received envious looks from their peers wherever they went. But now, his weight had increased by almost half. The 4 bearers felt as if they were carrying a wild ox. It was much easier than carrying Tang Dashao. Because even a wild ox's weight couldn't compare to Tang Dashao's, his peers were no longer looking at him with envy. Instead, they were looking at him as if they were watching a show. As Jun Moxie had expected, the Dugu family had given him a show of strength the moment they arrived. There was no one at the door to welcome him. He handed over the invitation and waited for a long time. Then, a panting guard ran over and said, "The old master has invited young Master June in." June Moxie replied with an oath. "Why isn't anyone coming out to welcome me?" The guard couldn't help but roll his eyes. "I've already made it so clear, and you're still hoping for someone to come out to welcome you?" He could only say, "The old master has said that young master is not an outsider. There's no need for such elaborate formalities and fake greetings." June Moxie nodded and said, "Very well. Since we're all on the same side, I won't stand on ceremony. I also have some matters to attend to. Since we're all on the same side, the old master will surely understand. I'll visit another day." Dachau acted as if he'd heard the words "old master is not home." "Young master, please come another day." He turned around and left without any hesitation. "Damn it. If you hadn't taken the initiative to invite me, I would have come willingly. Now that I'm here, I'm treated like this. Do you think this young master is so easy to bully? In any case, you're the one who's anxious. I'm not. Who's afraid of who? If you piss me off, I'll marry your granddaughter and beat her up 8 times a day." The moment he turned around and left, the guards were immediately dumbfounded. It wasn't that they hadn't seen arrogant people before, but they'd never seen anyone who dared to be so arrogant in the Dugu family. Tang Yuan's bearers almost cried. "Little ancestor, can't you let us take a breather? It's a pity that we were carried so far." June Moxie had already walked a few steps away in the blink of an eye. It seemed that he didn't intend to return. Suddenly, a figure rushed out of the Dugu family's gate. "June Sunshao, please wait." It was Dugu Chung. "Third young master, the whole family is waiting for you inside. Why are you leaving? You've already come here. So, it won't make much of a difference even if you're in a hurry." Dugu Chung had a dark expression on his face. But, he still put on an affectionate expression. He ran a few steps forward, and grabbed June Moxie's hand. Come back with me." Then, he turned his head and berated the guard. "Didn't I say that I'd come out to greet you? What do you mean you don't need to greet me? What kind of guard are you? How can you speak such nonsense? Do you think you can offend such an honorable guest as June Sunshao? You'll receive 20 lashes of the whip in a moment. That's a small punishment." The guard felt wronged. So, he shut his mouth and lowered his head. However, June Moxie was about to burst into laughter. "This Dugu Chung is very interesting. He sold himself out as soon as he opened his mouth. But, he still has the guts to put on an act. This skill is not small. It's no wonder that everyone says that the Dugu family is full of troublemakers. The rumors are true. First, he said that he'd come out to greet him. Then, he said that the guard had said that he didn't need to greet him. Isn't this making it clear that he was listening to the guard's words? He slapped his own mouth in such a manner. And he even slapped his own mouth in such a manner. June Moxie had never seen such a thing. This servant doesn't understand propriety. Please don't blame him, third young master. Please come in." Dugu Chung felt that he had spoken big words. So, he somewhat admired his quick wit. But, in the blink of an eye, he saw a mountain of flesh. And there's also Tang Dachau. Tang Dachau is becoming more and more mighty. This foolish brother is very envious. Tang Yuan snorted. Then, he put on a fake smile and said, "It's rare that I, Tang Yuan, can make Dachau envious. It's a great honor." Dugu Chung couldn't help but get angry when he heard Tang Yuan's sarcastic tone. Back then, Tang Yuan had failed to live up to expectations. In fact, he wasn't necessarily stronger than Mo Xie. In fact, he would have had no choice but to retreat if he had met the 7 wolf-like men of the Dugu family. But now, Fatty was worth more than 100 million. His self-confidence had also swelled. But, when he saw Dugu Chung, he actually dared to make fun of him. With a face full of black lines, Dugu Chung led the way. But, in his heart, he was thinking about how to make this fatty make a fool of himself today. And this June Moxie is really too much of an eyesore. Look at his sloppy appearance. How can my sister like this person? He wants to be my brother-in-law with this kind of conduct. What a misfortune for our family. Chapter 459. As soon as he stepped into the lobby, June Moxie suddenly felt as if he had entered Tiger Mountain. Duguzongheng was sitting on the main seat in front of him. He was draped in a tiger skin cloak. His body was slightly bent over, and he was looking down at Chu Yang from above. His eyes were like an eagle's. He looked very much like a mountain eagle. In fact, he didn't need to disguise himself as long as his hair was slightly adjusted. General Dugawudi glared at Old Man Dugu, his hand on the hilt of his sword. His imposing manner was overbearing as he stood majestically in front of Old Man Dugu. Although there were no pockmarks on his face, his expression was that of the head of the 8 great Vajrapani, big pockmark. On both sides, there were 7 burly men lined up in a row. Each of them had the backs of a tiger and waists of a bear. Each and every one of them seemed to be itching for a fight. It was none other than the 8 great Vajras. This scene was too realistic. It was too much of a knockoff. Wasn't he afraid of being sued for infringement? If Duguzongheng were to ask, the Heavenly King covers the Earth Tiger. Then June Moxie would immediately respond with, the pagoda subdues the river demon. As for the things that happened after that, such as talking in the middle of the day, no one's face turning red or yellow, and so on, they were even more familiar with each other. However, even if it was a knockoff, it was impossible for it to have the phrase, the Heavenly King covers the Earth Tiger. No one spoke for a long time. The atmosphere was extremely stifling. All the gazes in the hall were fixed on Dashao and June Moxie's face. Behind him, Tang Dashao, Tang Yuan, and Fatty Tang were already trembling. Their lips were green and their faces were pale. It seemed like they could not hold on any longer. After a long time, Duguzongheng bellowed, "Hey, June Moxie?" The young Master June was still immersed in the memory of the handsome, confident, and resourceful young Master June. So, he subconsciously flipped the right side of his robe and blurted out, "The Pagoda Town. Ah, old Dugu is well." Pagoda Town? What is this place? The 9 burly men of the Dugu family were all confused at the same time. Wu Najuan brat, what are you talking about in our Dugu family's Pagoda Town? What the hell are you talking about? That Pagoda Town. That's right. June Moxie rolled his eyes. What I meant was that the moment I entered this hall I could clearly feel your majestic aura. It was like a pagoda that could support the heavens and the earth, and it immediately stunned me. Yes, that's what it means. Duguzongheng's face lit up with happiness. He opened his mouth and wanted to laugh. But he held it back. Then, he put on a solemn face, and said with a belly full of pent-up desire, "Oh, am I really that mighty?" That's right. You're really mighty, really mighty. June Moxie gave a thumbs up. You are indeed a good kid. You have a good eye. Duguzongheng's laughter was very refreshing. His steel needle-like beard trembled as he said, "Your little mouth is also very sweet." June Moxie's face turned black. June Moxie, don't think that you can joke around with just a few good words. Look at what you've done, brat. Great General Dugawudi saw that the old man had unexpectedly laughed. He knew that the atmosphere was about to change. So, he hastily roared with a black face. He wanted to remind the old man that this matter wasn't over yet. And he couldn't let this brat get away with it. Oh, cough. Duguzongheng coughed twice and sat upright. How am I joking around? Don't tell me that you're not mighty enough? What good deed did I do to make you remember it? Hee, Uncle Dugu, you're too polite. I've always done good deeds without leaving my name. I've always done good deeds. It's not difficult for people to do good deeds. But, it's difficult to persevere in doing good deeds throughout one's life, just like me. June Moxie spoke in a sincere and heartfelt manner. He paced back and forth as he spoke. Then, he found a chair and sat down on it. That seat happened to be face to face with Duguwoodi. Duguwoodi's nose became crooked in anger. "I'll fight with anyone who dares to say that our Dugu family's elders and children are troublemakers. This man before me is the real master of troublemakers. We've been here for a long time. But this guy hasn't done anything. Not only did he sit down, but he's even boasting shamelessly about persevering in doing good deeds every day. He doesn't even blush when he says those words. Those words are more appropriate for an old man like me, the one who asked you to sit down? Stand up for me." Great General Dugu was furious. "I, your future father-in-law, haven't even asked you to sit down. But you've already sat down in such an ostentatious manner. You're going against the heavens." "Oh, cough, cough, cough. I've been wondering why the old man has called me here. Then I thought about it and I finally remembered. I reckon that the Dugu family has made a fortune. So, they're preparing to pay me back the money they owed me a few months ago?" June Moxie crossed his legs. "So, I came here. Alas, the landlord doesn't have any surplus grain these days. Moreover, it's been a long time. So, I shouldn't drag this account any longer. It's almost the end of the year. So, it's a good time to collect the debt. In fact, it's not that much money. It's only 90 million taels. That's not even 10 million. June Moxie snapped his fingers as he said that. He then pointed at the maid standing by the door. "That beautiful lady over there, I'll have to trouble you to bring a cup of tea." It was a slip of the tongue. It was a slip of the tongue. It should be 2 cups. He and my brother here. Look, the weather is too hot. He's sweating profusely. He needs to replenish his water quickly. The maid couldn't help but want to laugh. But, she hastily held it back. "What is this? The weather is too hot? It's almost the 12th lunar month. Besides, what's with that look in your eyes? Your fat brother is obviously scared. I can see that." General Duguwoodi was dumbfounded when he heard June Mocie's sudden change of topic. June Mocie's sudden change of topic left him dumbfounded. Small amount of money? 90 million taels of silver is still considered small amount of money? How many people in the entire Tian Xiang Empire can come up with such a small amount of money? However, Great General Dugu could also see that this youngster was clearly threatening him. "You'll have to pay me back 90 million taels of silver if you continue to treat me like this. After all, I have an indelible identity as a creditor. Moreover, I'm a creditor who can bankrupt the Dugu family at any time." Duguwoodi panted a few times. Then, he finally roared, "Someone come! Bring tea! Bring good tea! Bring a chair for Tang Dashao." He thought for a moment and then added, "I want the largest one you can sit on." Dugu Chung and his brothers had strange expressions on their faces when they heard this. They couldn't help but want to laugh. "Ah, fatty! This old man has invited the June family's third young master, June Moxie. What are you doing here?" Dugu Zongheng seemed to have noticed Tang Yuan at this time. So, he glared at him and asked. What he was implying was, "I didn't invite you. So, what are you doing here?" June Moxie couldn't help but praise him. This old man's words are really direct. He's just short of asking me to leave. Tang Yuan thought to himself, "You think I want to come here? If the third young master hadn't used money to threaten me, I wouldn't have bothered to come. However, old man Dugu had asked me, and Dashao had just won a big prize. So, I can't be scared at this time." So, I immediately straightened my stomach. Although I was still a little scared, I had already steadied my mind. So, I braced myself and said, "This junior and the third young master are very close friends. We haven't seen each other for many days. Today we finally got to meet again. Moreover, the third young master has been invited by the eldest young master." Fatty was indeed a good friend. He spoke in an unyielding manner. He didn't mention that it was June Moxie who had forced him to come. He could tell that the Dugu family was looking for June Moxie for some reason. So, he was afraid that June Moxie would be at a disadvantage if he were to say something inappropriate. So, he simply shouldered the responsibility. So that's how it is. You have the spirit of brotherhood. Dugu Zongheng nodded and said, "Sit." Tang Yuan thanked him. Then, he sat on the oversized chair that had just been moved over. The nervousness he had felt at the beginning had already disappeared. The quality of the chair was pretty good. It was able to withstand the pressure. It only made 2 creaking sounds. Old man Dugu Zongheng stared at June Moxie and Tang Yuan. A long time passed. Then, he sighed and said, "The 2 famous debauches of the capital are actually 2 pure men. I hadn't expected this." As he spoke, he glanced at his 7 grandsons. He couldn't help but feel greatly disappointed when he saw how each and every one of them looked timid when they met his gaze. Dugu Zongheng had praised June Emosia and Tang Yuan as real men. It could be said that June Emosia and Tang Yuan's evaluation wasn't low. After all, his 7 grandsons hadn't received such praise. It must be known that today's meeting had been deliberately arranged. The old man had purposely created such a solemn atmosphere. Coupled with the awe-inspiring aura of a room full of experienced generals, if an ordinary person were here, they would have long been suffocated by this oppressive atmosphere. This was the current Fatty. If it had been the Tang Yuan from 4 months ago, he would have probably pissed his pants in fright. However, June Moxie had arrived with a relaxed expression on his face. In fact, he was laughing and scolding in a carefree manner. This kind of temperament wasn't something that an ordinary debauchee like Da Xiao could possess. Tang Yuan had been somewhat restrained in the beginning, but he had slowly relaxed. It couldn't be denied that June Moxie's influence had played a role in this, but Tang Yuan had been able to return to normal in this kind of atmosphere. So, it could be said that he was quite capable. However, it would be somewhat arbitrary if old man Dugu believed that his grandsons weren't as good as the 2 of them. His own grandsons, even great General Duguwudi, had been taught a lesson by him over the years. So, they were like mice that had seen a cat. So, how would they be able to relax? But they wouldn't have the slightest stage fright if this gang of troublemakers were to go to another family's house. So, they wouldn't be afraid as long as this old man Dugu wasn't around. After all, the June family's residence was a place where those 7 brothers had smashed up June Moxie's courtyard. Chapter 460. Today's outbreak, second update. 2 consecutive days of outburst. Please double the monthly votes. Dugu Xiaoyi, who had regained her original slender figure, followed behind her. She saw June Moxie and stuck out her tongue. Then, she gave him a meaningful look, hinting, "Be careful. Is that June Moxie? Come out and let this old lady have a look. I want to see what kind of hero can make my granddaughter so crazy." The old lady came out and stood in front of June Moxie. She looked left and right, looking for the hateful brat who had cheated her granddaughter's heart. June Moxie started to sweat. He had always heard people say that the Dugu family was full of troublemakers. It seemed like it wasn't without reason. Such an old madam came out and she was actually so valiant. Dugu Xiaoyi had grown up in such a family. It wasn't easy for her to grow up like this. It would be difficult for her not to be valiant. He had no choice but to stand up and say, "This young one is..." "Oh, is that Tang Yuan?" the old lady asked again. "This young one is..." Fatty quickly bowed and saluted. The old lady smiled. "The new god of wealth of the capital is indeed extraordinary." "What? God of wealth of the capital? When did Fatty get such a cool nickname?" June Emosia stared blankly for a moment. He then looked at Fatty Tang with a playful grin. But then again, it wasn't surprising. Fatty was now the leader of the aristocratic hall. He was in the limelight. His net worth was at least 300 million taels. So, the title of God of Wealth wasn't in vain. Da Xiao was cursing inwardly when he saw the old lady waving her hand. You 7 brats should accompany young Master Tang to play. There's nothing for you to do here. Entertain our honored guests well. The heroes and legends rushed forward, and the other 7 people hastily complied. Then, they went forward to pick up Fatty Tang and walked out. They walked quickly and anxiously as if they were being chased by a dog. They were finally free. You're welcome. Have a seat. The old lady nodded her head and turned around to sit on the armchair. She then asked Duguzongheng and Duguzongheng to sit down as well. A group of female soldiers stood behind the old lady. Each and every one of them stared at Da Xiao with the gaze of a mother-in-law looking at her son-in-law. They were very curious as to how this brat, who had such a disreputable reputation, could still have the ability to capture the heart of their daughter. Especially the middle-aged woman on the left of the old lady, who was staring at it intently. Duguzongheng and Duguwudi had lost their domineering aura as soon as the old lady had arrived. They had become as quiet as cicadas out of fear. In fact, they didn't even dare to speak loudly. June Moxie. This brat is very good. Very good. He's a very charming young man. The old lady praised. Then, she turned her head towards the crowd and said, You see, this brat's nose is a nose and his eyes are eyes. He looks very much like a human. The ladies nodded one after another in agreement. June Moxie had black lines on his forehead. What? What kind of words are these? He looks very much like a human. Does this mean that I'm not a human? I only look like a human? Besides, what do you mean by nose is a nose and eyes are eyes? How can I see a nose if I don't have a nose and ears? Are you praising me or insulting me? June brat, you've already done this kind of thing. So, I want to know what you're planning to do with my Xiao Yi. The old lady was very direct. She didn't even bother with greetings. Instead, she asked a very sharp and direct question that left no room for hesitation or evasion. What kind of arrangements? June Moxie was stunned. The old lady's words are very strange. I really don't know what I've done. I've attracted the old lady's questioning. So, I ask the old lady to clarify what I've done. Humph. You look so handsome, but your mouth is so crafty and mischievous. You instigated Xiao Yi to walk out in front of everyone with a big belly. You know the consequences of that, don't you? The old lady's face was calm, and her tone was quite unfriendly. Yes, Miss Dugu was indeed thoughtless in this matter. But I didn't instigate her. I didn't even think about it. Heavens! June Moxie hastily clarified. The old lady didn't wait for Da Xiao to finish speaking. She interrupted him. I also believe that you wouldn't cause such trouble. But it doesn't matter whether you instigated her or not. In any case, the girl's original intention was for you. You won't deny this, right? June Moxie nodded helplessly. He couldn't deny this point even if he wanted to. Da Xiao had lived 2 lives. He had a clear conscience. So, he would be erasing his conscience if he denied it this time. And he would have a very guilty conscience. This matter has caused great damage to the Dugu family's reputation. Don't you know this? The old lady was aggressive as she continued to ask questions. Yes. But, this isn't a big deal for the Dugu family, is it? June Moxie frowned slightly. It seemed that the Dugu family's reputation had always been synonymous with toughness. They didn't have much of a reputation to speak of. Moreover, the little girl's methods could be seen through at a glance. I didn't say that I wouldn't marry her. So, is there a need to be so serious? But, this matter has a great impact on Xiao Yi's reputation. You should know this in your heart, right? The old lady also snorted. She couldn't help but get angry when she saw that this kid didn't want to continue. It really has a great impact. June Moxie nodded frankly. Then, what do you plan to do? The old lady turned a corner and came back. To be honest, I don't have a specific plan for the time being. June Moxie told the truth. You don't have a plan. The old lady suddenly stood up. Don't tell me that you want to deny it after eating it all? How do I want to deny it after eating it all? I didn't eat it at all. How can I say that I have eaten it all? June Moxie felt that he was wronged to death. Why do they say that I'm like Chin Shimmy? Besides, the little lass almost played me to death that day. If it wasn't for the fact that the little lass was infatuated with me and didn't care about the consequences, would I, your young master, be willing to go around in circles with you? Naturally, I wouldn't be as humble as I am now. Why is it that, when I soften a little, all of you start to bully me? Since it has come to this old lady might as well tell you clearly. Xiao-yi has set her mind on you. She is infatuated with you. You can't let her down. Otherwise, this old lady will be the first to not let you go, the old lady slowly said. Her eyes looked at June Moxie's eyes. Are you worried about Guan Qinghan? June Moxie frowned and said, the old lady can rest assured. If I really intend to accept, then I won't let Guan Qinghan down. I won't let Xiao-yi down either. I naturally have my own plan. Your plan? Haha. It's normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines, but there needs to be a title for it. The old lady smiled. She stared at June Moxie intently and said, regardless of the man's family, there must be a head of the family. And the wife is the head of the family. If there is no head of the family, and everyone wants to fight for favor, won't it be a mess? What should you do? So, I called you here today because I want to ask you, in your heart, is that girl Xiao-yi your wife? A stable harem makes the world at peace. Although this saying applies to emperors, it also applies to ordinary families. A harmonious family is the way to progress. The old lady slowly looked at June Moxie. This kind of thing must be decided as soon as possible. Otherwise, a long night will bring many dreams. It'll be bad if we give people hope. What do you mean, the old lady? June Moxie raised his eyebrows. Our the Dugu family only has one precious girl. So, this old lady will never allow her to be a concubine. Our the Dugu family can't afford to lose face like this. Xiao-yi must get married. But, she must be the first wife of the June family. The old lady snorted. The first wife? June Moxie couldn't help but laugh. The old lady is quite good at joking. But this joke isn't funny. Joking? Don't tell me that you want my Xiao-yi to be your concubine? This is outrageous. The old lady glared at him. She slammed her walking stick on the ground. Dugu Xiao-yi panicked. She was afraid that her grandmother would fall out with her sweetheart. So, she hugged the old lady's arm and shook it. Then, she acted like a spoiled child. Grandmother. At the same time, she looked at June Moxie with pleading eyes. It was obvious that she was begging him not to go against her grandmother. If they had a falling out, then her beautiful marriage would be ruined in vain. I've spent a lot of effort to bring about such a good situation between the two families. June Moxie was about to explode. But, he was forcibly suppressed by Dugu Xiaoyi's glare. June Moxie took 2 deep breaths as he thought of the little girl's deep affection for him. He tried to restrain his anger. But, his face had become unprecedentedly serious. The old lady Dugu has spoken openly. So, I'll make this matter clear. June Moxie's eyes suddenly became as sharp as a sword. They slowly swept over everyone present. And everyone felt stifled in their hearts. In my opinion, marriage is my business. It's my business. It's my business. It's my life's most important matter. Who I want to spend the rest of my life with. So, I have to make a good choice. And I'll have to make a good choice if I'm not careful. Then, I'll have to make a good choice. And I can't afford to be careless. I can't afford to be careless. Xiao-yi is deeply in love with me. There's no doubt about this. In fact, I've been aware of it since the beginning. But, I've always felt that Xiao-yi is still young. So, she might not have made up her mind. Perhaps, she might meet a more satisfactory Mr. Right in the future. So, I didn't give her a direct answer. Then, she played a trick on me on the way back. She almost killed me. and I was very annoyed. But I was moved when she walked out of the Tianxiang city's gate with her pregnant belly. And it truly moved me. Therefore, I firmly believed that Dugu Xiaoyi would be Jun Moxi's woman. And I, Jun Moxi, would approve of her. Old man Dugu and the old lady Dugu's complexions subconsciously relaxed when they heard Da Xiao's words. However, but this doesn't mean that I'll accept everything. Jun Moxi's words stopped the old lady's question from leaving her mouth. Xiao Yi drugged Jun Moxi in Tiannan, and she walked out of the Tianxiang city's gate with her pregnant belly. And this shows how much she loves me. Humans aren't plants. So, how can we be heartless? And I'm sincerely moved by her desperate feelings. And I'm deeply moved. Chapter 461. Today's outburst has arrived. The fourth is in the process of trying harder. Moreover, she had acted on her own initiative in these two matters. And they had resulted in irreparable and serious consequences. I don't mind that she had messed with me that day. But Guan Qinghan had almost been forced to commit suicide by the corrupt scholars of the world. And what would happen if the relationship between the two families were placed on the table at this moment? There would be no leeway for us to turn the situation around. Now I'll have to face a big problem if I accept this marriage. But the two families will break off completely if I don't accept it. Fortunately, I've always had a good impression of this little girl. So it wouldn't be difficult for me to accept it. But what if I didn't have a good impression of her? It can be imagined that the two families would become mortal enemies from then on, and they would fight to the bitter end for several decades. Then, the Jun family would be exterminated, and the Dugu family would be exterminated, and neither of our families would be able to bear the consequences of that. And all of this could have been avoided. Xiao Yi is here at this moment. But I still want to say this. She's so capricious. She doesn't consider the consequences of her actions. So, how can I feel at ease handing over the position of the first wife to her? Jun Moxi had spoken these words in a very heavy tone. His tone was gentle, but it was also very serious. Dugu Xiaoyi lowered her head in shame. In fact, she had almost buried her small head in her chest. She was an exceptionally intelligent girl. So, she had long since realized that the consequences of her mischievous actions had been very bad. And it had been very tiring. The old lady opened her mouth to speak. She wanted to say a few words in her granddaughter's defense. But she didn't say anything in the end. Instead, she sighed softly. Dugu Zongheng and Dugu Wudi looked at each other. They had put themselves in Dugu Xiaoyi's shoes. In fact, they wouldn't have dared to have such a daring wife. But Xiao Yi is still young. The old lady's wife had been watching Da Xiao the most. She was also Dugu Xiaoyi's mother. She had hastily interjected, and defended her daughter. Yes, the little girl is indeed young. But that doesn't mean that she deserves to be forgiven for her mistakes. Auntie, Dugu Xiaoyi is from an aristocratic family. The Dugu family's pampering of her had led to a terrible consequence. In fact, it was a very sad consequence. That little girl had become the representative of the Dugu family to a certain extent. Pay attention, it's the direction of attack. Jun Moxi said sternly, you can put it this way. If the 7 young masters cause trouble outside and suffer losses, as long as it's not too excessive, your family will let the younger generation deal with the matter on their own. The older generation will not interfere. However, the Dugu family wouldn't care about right or wrong if something were to happen to Xiao Yi outside. In fact, the entire Dugu family would go into battle together. No matter how unreasonable it is, when it comes to the little girl, it will become very reasonable. Fortunately, the little girl has a kind nature. Otherwise, there would have been many unmanageable consequences. When all is said and done, Dugu Xiaoyi's actions have already represented the Dugu family. If she were to marry into the Jun family one day, then she would be able to represent the powerful forces of the Jun family and the Dugu family. This is tantamount to expanding her influence by more than twofold. If she were to act recklessly at that time, then I can clearly say that apart from a few mysterious and hidden aristocratic families, all the other aristocratic families in the world may be destroyed by her words. Perhaps she will have the potential to become the first wife in the future. But I can't agree to it now. I don't dare to agree to it. June Moxie said boldly, "Let me ask you. You wouldn't have agreed to it if you were in her shoes, right? So why do you have to force me?" June Moxie, will not only marry one woman. For now, I have already confirmed that I have Guan Qing Han. And Guan Qing Han saved my life at all costs because of Xiao Yi's mistake. And this has led to this complicated situation. To put it bluntly, I would have died if Sister Qing Han hadn't risked her life to save me. Then, how would the Jun family and the Dugu family face this? Wouldn't it be unfair to Sister Qing Han if I had promised to make Xiao Yi the first wife? Because she had made up for Xiao Yi's mistake. But she had incurred the criticism of the world's scholars. She had been consigned to eternal damnation. And she would still have to stand under the little girl in the end. How could this be tolerated? But Guan Qing Han has always been your sister-in-law. How could she be your first wife? The old lady pondered over June Moxie's words. Then she finally asked. Old Madam also said that it was all in the past. That's all in the past. And I believe that Guan Qing Han's current status is that of my third uncle's adopted daughter. And I believe that this isn't a secret anymore. So, why can't she marry me? Moreover, I've never thought of dividing them into seniority. Who's older and who's younger? That's something that we have to fight for. And we can even recognize you as the eldest sister as long as others submit to you. June Moxie smiled. Let's say that I've always been in a passive position in this matter. And I don't want to be moved like this. So, it's too hasty to talk about marriage right now. You mean, no matter what, you can't give Xiaoyi the title of legal wife? Dugu Zongheng fiercely looked at June Moxie. Then, he leaned over and spoke in an extremely dangerous tone. That was only a rational analysis. I've always had a principle. I don't like to accept threats no matter what I do. It doesn't matter who threatens me. June Moxie played it down and said, I would feel very bored if I had to accept threats in my own life. So, it doesn't matter if we break up. June Moxie's unyielding attitude made Dugu Zongheng very unhappy. So, he glared at Dugu Zongheng and got angry. All right. Let's not dwell on this issue any longer. The old lady suddenly smiled. She was all smiles as she said, Xiao Yi's status hasn't been decided yet. But I believe that Xie won't consider this matter for the time being. So, it's the same to get engaged first. And the children and grandchildren will take care of themselves. So, why should we care so much about it? As long as Xie treats Xiao Yi well in the future, and tolerates Xiao Yi, nothing is better than that. Moreover, Xie hasn't yielded even a little bit in the face of the Dugu family's pressure. He's spoken frankly. His words may be unpleasant to hear. But it's undeniable that every word he's spoken is the truth. Everyone has heard it clearly. And this has made me see the value of a man. A man who can't be subdued by force is a true man. If Xie had been intimidated by our family, and would have agreed to whatever we said, then, I would have reconsidered whether or not I should have agreed to this marriage. This brat, Xie, is pleasing to my eyes. So, you've passed this test. Dugu Zongheng and Dugu Wudi felt faint at the same time. You're the one who said it, and you're the one who said it. But what should we do? It was your idea to test him when we came here. And it's your idea not to test him now. So, what else is there to say when you've passed this test? Who would dare to say anything? The two of you will make an appointment with Jun Zhantian in a few days, and settle this matter first. We can talk about it later. In any case, this marriage must be settled first. The old lady bossily made these arrangements to the two men. She didn't even look at them. Well, you will personally go there in order to show your sincerity. Then, you will send a matchmaker to exchange documents after you've come to an agreement. Then, you will find a suitable time to carry out the engagement ceremony. She thought for a moment, and then said, "This ceremony will be held in the presence of the royal family and the civil and military officials. Moreover, we will take advantage of this opportunity to collect the money that we've given away in the past few years. I've recorded all the money that you and your father have given away in the past few years. It's a thick book. I'll ask Xiao Yi to send it to you later. Remember, we've spent money on those whose names are on it. So, we can't let any of them off. We must at least collect back our capital. Well, we'll also invite those whose names aren't on it. After all, we'll give them some face, right? This matter is settled. We'll send out invitations when the two of them get married. We don't need to be so extravagant this time. We'll arrange for a few hundred people. Well, we can consider expanding the scale if the Jun family pays the money. After all, the old Jun family still has some face. Well, we must look at the amount of money clearly. We've given 500 taels of silver at the beginning, and we've only given 400 taels of silver this time. That would be too much. We can't make friends with such people in the future. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a bride's money. Those who celebrate birthdays, give birth to children, move. Hey, I say, old man, isn't your birthday coming up soon? It seems that we'll be able to receive 2 gifts this time. The time is very tight. Not bad. Even Jun Moxie's head was covered in cold sweat this time. The old lady is very thoughtful. They're not from the same family, and they're not from the same family. Duguwudi grinned and nodded. He had a look of a money grubber on his face. Yes, yes, mother is very wise. It seemed that he would be able to clear the Jun family's debt of 90 million after receiving these 2 gifts. Tell the imperial astronomer to quickly pick an auspicious day. The most important thing is to tell him to stagger the date of the engagement and the birthday celebration. Then, inform Kong Lingyang, and ask him to take charge. Duguwudi hastily interrupted her. Mother, Kong Lingyang is already dead. He looked at Jun Moxie as he said this. Kong Lingyang's death must have been caused by this brat. Then, there must have been a ghost. Dead? Oh, it's such a pity for such a talent. Old Mistress Dugu's complexion didn't change as she sighed. She didn't know what kind of talent she was feeling sorry for. Was it a pity for a knowledgeable scholar, or was it a pity for a wedding host? Then, let's find an old chancellor from the Imperial College. Dugu Zongheng nodded and said, That's simple. Although those fellows don't usually get along with us, it doesn't matter. If they don't want to come, we can just tie them up with a rope. Once we get to the scene, if they still dare to not give us face, they'll have the guts. That's good. The old lady nodded in a gratified manner and said, As for the other matters, you 2 big men can do as you see fit. This old woman is a Taoist woman. So, it's not appropriate for her to get involved in these matters. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. What kind of person is this? You're not getting involved in these matters? You're taking care of everything yourself. But, that old fool Duguzong Hung wants to tie someone up with a rope. And the most outrageous thing is that the old lady is saying, That's good. Chapter 462. Alright, you men drink. We women won't blindly get involved. Xiao Yi girl, come with me. The last sentence was a little harsh. Dugu Xiao Yi saw that Jun Imosia had arrived, and couldn't pull her leg. She didn't want to leave. The old lady suddenly stopped before leaving. She then turned around to face Dugu Zongheng and Dugu Wu Di. I forgot to ask you 2 something. Didn't you say that Jun Zhan Tian's grandson was a debauchee? That he was a rotten wood that couldn't be carved, that he couldn't be pasted on a wall, and that he couldn't be eaten as a dog? These words were said by you 2. But why do I feel that it isn't the case today? I see that this brat is more pleasing to the eye than those 7 fools outside. You two must give me an explanation later. Dugu Zongheng was stunned. Dugu Wu Di was flabbergasted. Explanation? What explanation? How are we supposed to explain? We also want an explanation for Jun Mosie's rapid rise in power a few months ago. But who is going to give us an explanation? Such a good boy has a strong character. He isn't afraid of power. He's firm in his heart. Moreover, he's handsome. So, how did he become a debauchee? Don't tell me that you two look down on the Jun family? Are you deliberately distorting the facts? Or are you worried about the emperor's opinion? Are you afraid that 2 military families will become suspicious if they become in-laws? Humph! Let me tell you. You 2 cowards nearly ruined my precious granddaughter's marriage. Do you think my granddaughter's happiness will be decided by your emotions? I see that the 2 of you together aren't even as good as Jun Mosia alone. I tell you that I'm very angry about this matter. I'm not done with you. Just you wait. This matter isn't over. The old madam roared angrily for a while before she finally left. Dugu Zongheng and Dugu Wu Di looked at each other in dismay. They wanted to cry, but no tears came out. The army of women slowly retreated. Along the way, they could still hear the stern voice of the old lady, as if she was issuing a charge on the battlefield. I don't care what method you use. In short, during this period of time, you must train this girl to the standard of a wife. Look at how you guys have spoiled her. What has she become? She didn't look like a lady from a noble family at all. Not to mention that the other party didn't agree. Even if your son married a wife, would he agree to such a legal wife? I'll leave this matter to the 11 of you. If you can't do it, I'll kick all of you out. Xiaoyi, hee, Grandma's darling, why are you frowning? Come on, smile for Grandma. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Grandma is here. Grandma will definitely help you. Grandma will do everything for you. The Dugu father and son in the hall, as well as Jun Moxie, were left speechless after hearing these words from the old lady. In fact, their bodies were suffused with a feeling of powerlessness. On one hand, she had just ordered all the madams to teach him a lesson, but on the other hand she was so protective of him. How could such a lesson be taught? How could he accomplish anything in his lifetime? The 3 men looked at each other in silence for a long time. Then, Dugu Zongheng took the initiative to jump up and shouted, Mother Fu *Ker. Serve the wine. Serve the dishes. Is everyone King dead? Hurry up. Dugu Wu Di also jumped up at the same time. But, he didn't shout when he saw that his father had shouted first. Instead, he waved his arms, and made a few hand gestures. It didn't take long before 2 large tables were filled with good wine and delicacies. Dugu Chung and the others had also returned with Tang Yuan. Their timing was very precise, and they were well trained. The 11 men had filled up the 2 tables. They had wanted to sit together at one table. But everyone except for Jun Moxie had bulky physique. In fact, they were very different from ordinary people. Especially Fatty and Tang Yuan. They had taken up the space of 4 people as soon as they sat down. This left everyone speechless. If they were forced to sit together, then they wouldn't be able to eat. Dugu Zongheng poured a cup of wine, and drained it in one gulp. Then, he wiped his mouth and said, I won't say anything else. Jun brat, you must treat this old man's precious granddaughter well. This old man won't forgive you if anything happens to her. Other people are afraid of that old bastard Jun Zhantian, but this old man isn't afraid. Jun Moxie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He understood that no matter how nice the words came out of the mouths of this family, they sounded like provocations and threats. This big family never knew how to speak in a gentle manner. That's right. Jun Moxie, I'll skin you if you dare to bully my daughter. Dugu Wu Di raised his cup and clinked it with Jun Moxie's. Then, he raised his head and the wine was gone with a gulp. Brother-in-law, ha ha ha, brother-in-law, come and drink. The heroes and legends rushed forward with their wine cups in their hands. It was obvious that they wanted to get this pretty boy drunk. Duguzong Hung looked at the younger generation and sighed. Then, he said in a somewhat desolate manner, "You drink to your heart's content. This old man won't accompany you. This old man can only drink 3 cups of wine in one meal. Alas, I used to be a distinguished and elegant hero who wouldn't get drunk even after 1,000 cups." Dugu Wu Di hastily consoled him. "Father, you don't need to worry. The old injury on your waist is more important. We'll be able to suppress it once we find the fur of the snow god marten. Then, you can drink as much as you want to drink at that time." The snow god marten is easier said than done. That's a spiritual creature of the world. We've been searching for it for more than 10 years now, but we haven't found any news. You must know that the difficulty of capturing the snow god marten is much more difficult than defeating a level 9 Xian beast to obtain the Xian Dan. Duguzong Heng's interest was waning. Does the old man's waist have an injury? What kind of injury? Jun Moxie stared blankly for a moment, and then asked out of curiosity. Dugu Wu Di stared blankly for a moment. Then, he suddenly remembered that this was the great divine doctor who had cured Jun Wui's leg injury. So, he couldn't help but look at him with hope in his eyes as he said, "My father was injured in battle when he was young, and his meridians were damaged. Since then, he's been coughing and having asthma since then. And there's no cure for it to this day. Do you want to take a look?" "I'll take a look." Jun Moxie grabbed Duguzong Heng's left hand without any trace of politeness. Then, he placed his 2 fingers on his pulse, and activated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Duguzong Heng's meridian's condition immediately appeared in his mind. His meridians are broken and withered. Is there no way to treat this illness in this world? Jun Moxie pondered for a long time. Then, he withdrew his hand and said, "It should be an arrow wound in his body. His lung meridians were injured that day. It wasn't very serious at first, but it's accumulated over a long period of time. I believe that even if we find the legendary fur of the snow god marten, it'll only be a temporary cure." "Ah? It's that serious? Then, do you have a way?" Dugu Wudi was gobsmacked. "It's not that there isn't a way, but it'll be very troublesome. Moreover, it'll take at least half a month's time." Jun Moxie frowned as he spoke in a confident manner. "Half a month's time can be cured? Not long, not long." Dugu Wudi's voice trembled. He suddenly grabbed Jun Moxie's shoulder. "My worthy son-in-law, you must cure my father's old injuries. I have no opinion on the matter between you and Xiao Yi." This move was very effective. Dugu Wudi had directly called him, "My worthy son-in-law, you obviously have no opinion." "But I have an opinion here." Jun Moxie rolled his eyes at him. Then, he said, "It's not a big deal for the time being. I'll give you a prescription. You go and get the ingredients. You take them every morning and night. Then, you'll come to my grandfather's place every day from the 3rd day onwards. I'll give him acupuncture treatment. With this kind of continuous treatment, I should be able to fully recover in about 10 days or so." Jun Moxie beamed as he said this. He took the pen and paper and started to write down a prescription. Dugu Wudi held it tightly in his hand as if he had found a treasure. His fingers were trembling with excitement. He quickly put it away in his bosom, and even patted it to show its existence. Old man Dugu's illness wasn't too troublesome. His meridians had been damaged. It was an incurable disease in the eyes of modern doctors. But it wasn't a big deal in Da Xiao's hands. Old man Dugu's old injuries were more than 10 years old. But they weren't as serious as Jun Wui's. So, he could use the Hong Jun Pagoda's spirit energy to flush it away. After all, it was the world's most primordial spirit energy. However, Jun Moxie had a vague plan in mind. So, how could he let go of such a strong ally like the Dugu family? Obviously, it would be more appropriate to let these two military leaders get together. At that time, there would be two big shots from the military who could talk about everything. How convenient would that be? As for his relationship with Dugu Xiaoyi, Jun Moxie didn't want to have any ideas. That was because that would make him feel like he was using nepotism. So, Jun Daxiao didn't want to take advantage of him. Moreover, he didn't want to profane his feelings because of this. Everyone started to celebrate as soon as the matter was settled. Especially Dugu Zongheng, who felt that there was hope for a full recovery. He was beaming with joy. Although he couldn't drink, he had become the most outstanding and powerful drinker. He glared at everyone, and no one was allowed to drink less. Tang Yuan was more tragic. Although he was fat, his alcohol tolerance wasn't good. In just a short while, he had secretly gone out to vomit 3 times. Then, he came back and continued to be forced to drink. Finally, he lost consciousness. He forced himself to say that he was going to the toilet and staggered out. Then, he didn't come back. Jun Moxie seemed to have heard a crashing sound from the pool. It seemed like something huge had fallen into the lake and created a huge splash. But, he didn't take it to heart. After all, this was the Dugu family, not the Jun family. Maybe the Dugu family had some kind of activity? Great General Dugu Wudi didn't know how many cups he had drunk. In the beginning, the 8 men of the Dugu family felt strange. How come this Jun Moxie doesn't get drunk no matter how much he drinks? But later on, everyone became tipsy. They didn't care whether it was Jun Moxie in front of them. They raised their cups and heroically shouted, "Cheers!" Then, they raised their necks in the end. Dugu Wudi narrowed his eyes and stuck out his tongue. His arm was like a pole, and he wrapped it around Jun Moxie's neck. He drunkenly said, "Brother, I'll leave this matter of my father to you, big brother." Jun Moxie had a bitter look on his face. He didn't know whether he should agree or not. What kind of seniority is this? Chapter 463. Heroes and legends rush forward. The 7 of them were also dead drunk, singing at the top of their lungs. Squinting their eyes, the 7 brothers finally fell to the ground, their snores shaking the heavens. In any case, everyone had drunk too much. So much so that when a maid came in and said something, no one heard it clearly. Even Daxiao did not run away. In the end, he stayed at the Dugu family's place. Daxiao drank a lot too. Although he forced out a lot of alcohol by cheating, the remaining alcohol was enough for him to drink a pot. In the end, the smell of alcohol filled the air, and he became muddle-headed. He looked for Tang Yuan everywhere but could not find him, so he went to the guest room to sleep. When he woke up the next day, he heard 2 maids whispering outside, "Hey, did you know? The guest who came yesterday drank too much." "Yeah, I heard about it too, but not in detail." "Then I'll tell you." "Don't tell anyone." "Yeah, I definitely won't tell anyone. I heard that fatty went to the toilet yesterday and vomited for a long time. Then there was a plop. Guess what happened?" "What happened?" "He actually jumped into the latrine pit and wanted to catch fish in there. Oh my God, there was a heavy rain just now. That splashed out. Oh, it's so disgusting." "Really? What happened after that?" Hey, Tong and the others were exhausted. The smell was terrible, and the place was not right. That fatty's whole body was submerged in there. More than a dozen people tied him up with ropes before they pulled him out. Everyone was splashed with blarg. Then they dragged him to the pond and washed him 5 times before they brought him into the guest room. It was said that there was still a stench after he entered the guest room. Tong and the others had no choice but to get 7 or 8 buckets of water and wash him twice before he was clean. Then, he still hasn't woken up after such a big struggle. Not woken up. Not only did he not wake up, but he kept shouting that he wanted to catch fish in there. He's really too strong, that's not all. It's said that when he went in, young Master Li was squatting inside. So, he grabbed him with one hand and threw him out. He still had a lingering fear after that. Fortunately, young Master Li was thrown out. Otherwise, he would have been smashed into the latrine pit. Although young Master Li is tall, he still can't be compared with young Master Tang. I heard from young Master Li that young Master Tang insisted on fishing, and then jumped down. Ah! Ha ha! I'm dying of laughter. Ha ha! I'm dying of laughter. June Moxie, who was eavesdropping, also burst into laughter. Although he knew that this was an embarrassing matter for his good buddy, and he really shouldn't laugh, this damn fatty was too good at messing around. With his weight, if he fell into that trap, it would really be impossible for him to call for help. As soon as they heard Da Xiao's laughter, the two maids immediately panicked. However, they saw this guy laughing all the way out. He only inquired about where Tang Yuan lived and then left. Only then did they let out a sigh of relief. It must be known that aristocratic families had very strict rules. For maids like them to discuss about visiting guests in private, they couldn't let the guests' companions know. When June Moxie saw Tang Yuan again, this guy was wrapped in a quilt and sleeping soundly. The smell of alcohol assailed his nostrils. From the looks of it, this guy actually didn't have any impression of what happened last night. Before coming here, June Moxie only felt that it was funny. This fatty really didn't know how to behave. He actually went to other people's latrine pit to catch fish just because he drank a little more. However, now that he saw Tang Yuan lying on the bed, June Moxie suddenly became suspicious. Tang Yuan might not know how to behave, or he might be careless, or he might be disappointing, or even tasteless, but he was absolutely not muddle-headed. Even if he was drunk, he definitely wouldn't be retarded enough to go to the latrine pit to catch fish, right? Moreover, with Tang Yuan's physique, how could there be such a big latrine pit? It could make him fall down and still flop around in it? This can't be King swimming pool. Other people might not know, but June Moxie knew about the June family's latrine pit. In addition to the owner's personal convenience, there was also a place to entertain guests, and also a place for the guards in the house. Other than the guards' place, which was slightly bigger, the other few facilities were of good quality. There was simply no possibility of putting guests in. Moreover, with Fatty's physique, there was only so much space, and it was estimated that he wouldn't be able to force his way in. But the fact was that, then how did Tang Yuan fall into the latrine pit? The only explanation was he schemed by someone? June Moxie gently lifted Tang Yuan's quilt and carefully examined his body. He couldn't find anything. He stood up and muttered to himself for a while before walking out. He beckoned a guard. "Take me to the place where we drank last night." Seeing that it was his future son-in-law, the guard didn't dare to neglect and brought June Moxie back to the place where they drank last night. The mess had already been cleaned up, but the faint smell of alcohol still lingered. June Moxie stood at the place where Tang Yuan was originally sitting. At this time, the big chair specially made for Fatty had already been removed. Da Xiao muttered to himself for a while and said, "How many convenient places are there around here?" The guard was startled and said, "Convenient places, there are 2 nearby. There are also some in the distance." "Oh, take me there." June Moxie waved his hand. The guard was very surprised, thinking that this future son-in-law was very strange. He had visited rockery and gardens before, but this was the first time he saw someone visiting a latrine. But the guest had a request, especially his future son-in-law. He couldn't dare to refuse. He had no choice but to bring him there. After looking at 3 convenient places in a row, June Moxie's suspicions grew stronger. These 3 places didn't have that kind of mark. But, after coming over from that side, there were only these 3 places that could be convenient. So, where did Tang Yuan go to? Is there any other place? June Moxie thoughtfully straightened up. He asked lightly. "There is, but it's a little further. Again, that place is used by some servants. It's extremely filthy." The guard inexplicably felt a trace of coldness. This young Master June was really strange. Ordinary people would have to cover their noses in such a place, but he acted as if nothing had happened. He didn't even frown. "Take me there." June Moxie calmly walked out. The guard's heart was perturbed. He had already realized that something was wrong. He was afraid that this son-in-law was investigating the matter of young Master Tang falling into the latrine pit last night. He simply brought June Moxie to the place where the incident happened. Along the way, he winked at a few familiar guards, asking them to quickly find the young masters and old masters. He was afraid that something big was going to happen. June Moxie didn't care at all. He let the guard pass the message. This matter would definitely need to be told to the person in charge of the Dugu family. So, he might as well save the time of sending someone to pass the message. June Moxie stood in front of the big latrine pit at the place where the incident happened last night with his hands behind his back. He carefully looked at it. That's right, it should be here. There were a few stone steps, and there was a deep pit at the bottom. But at the edge of the stone steps, there was a protrusion of about 40 to 50 centimeters. This should be a preventive measure to prevent adults from getting drunk or children from falling down. The Dugu family had done a good job in this regard. But how did Tang Yuan fall down? It was still quite a distance away. But there was a big pool down there. It was winter, and it was slightly frozen. June Moxie's complexion became colder the more he looked. He snorted, walked out, and asked, "I heard that there was a young master who went to the toilet here last night? May I ask who he is?" "Yes, that young master is the nephew of second grandmother's maternal family. He has been in the Dugu residence for many days. Call him in. Tell him that this young master has something to ask him." The guard hadn't finished speaking when June Moxie interrupted him. His tone was cold and indifferent. Dashao's words were filled with dense murderous intent. Great General Duguwudi had already rushed over anxiously outside the latrine. He was accompanied by the three brothers, Dugu Ing, Dugu Xiong, and Dugu Hao. Dugu Ing opened his mouth when he saw June Moxie come out. "Brother-in-law, why are you looking for a latrine pit so early in the morning? Why aren't you squatting? What are you doing?" Only Duguwudi could tell that something was wrong from June Moxie's gloomy and murderous expression. He asked, "Monsieur, did something happen? Tang Yuan got drunk last night. He. That guy is a good-for-nothing. He fell into this latrine pit. Ah, that's what happened." June Moxie stretched out his hand and pointed behind him. His cold gaze swept over the faces of the four men. "He fell into this latrine pit?" Duguwudi was a crude man, but he wasn't stupid. Otherwise, how could he have become the commander of an army? He immediately understood. How could he have fallen in here? "Great General, have you also thought of this? I'm also suspicious. There are so many latrines in your residence. Why didn't he go to them? Why did he have to run so far away? Moreover, this isn't his home. He's not familiar with this place. Moreover, he was drinking in the hall 2 kilometers away during the banquet. But he came here to jump into the latrine pit." June Moxie sneered. "Could it be that Fatty has been possessed by a ghost?" Duguwudi's face sank. Fatty might not be popular, but he was still the heir of the Tang family. Moreover, Tang Yuan was no longer the same as he had been in the past. His status as the aristocratic hall's treasurer and the capital's god of wealth was enough to increase his net worth by 10,000 times. Moreover, he was one of the few brothers that young Master June had acknowledged. So, how could he be ignored? And the consequences would be dire if he were to make a mistake in handling this matter. Great General Dugu suddenly turned around and looked at his three sons. "Who can tell me what's going on? Father, this is very normal. What can't a person do when he's drunk? Fatty Tang has such a cumbersome body. So, it's not worth making a fuss over if he drinks too much and falls into the latrine pit, right?" The corners of Dugu Ying's mouth twitched. He still wanted to laugh. This matter was too amusing. "You muddle-headed scoundrel! You're still amusing? Do you have a brain? Or is your brain moldy? Dugu Wudi was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Not worth making a fuss over? Didn't you see that your brother-in-law was about to kill someone? Fatty Tang has such a cumbersome body. Didn't you think that he would be able to walk 2 kilometers away after drinking so much wine? Emosia, I've heard that there's another young master in your residence? Jun Moxie narrowed his eyes and smiled. Then, he said in a rather gentle manner, moreover, this young master and Tang Yuan were squatting in the latrine last night. So, I'd like to see this fated person. I have a few words to say. After today, our deputy moderator Shi Zhu will be leaving us for some time due to work and health reasons. Shi Zhu is a respectable elder sister. She has contributed a lot to the Evil Monarch's book. She didn't get anything from me. In fact, we didn't even chat much. She basically talked, and I listened. To be honest, I'm very ashamed. But elder sister Shi Zhu spared no effort to create a harmonious book review area for our Evil Monarch. The 2 iron and steel class, 1 groups worked hard without complaint. Many of our brothers and sisters in the group have become real good friends thanks to her efforts. We can talk about anything in the group, and some of us feel like a family. She's also very concerned about my life on QQ. She makes me feel like I have such an elder sister taking care of me at any time. This feeling is very warm. I'm very grateful. Elder sister Shi Zhu's health isn't very good. Moreover, she has been working hard in the past few years. So, she has developed rheumatism in her legs. So, it's even more uncomfortable in the winter. Moreover, winter is the busiest time of her work. So, she needs to leave for a while. So, all we can do is silently wish her well. I wish her success in her work and good health. Chapter 464. Today's second update. The third update is being revised, estimated to take around 10 minutes. The fourth update is being worked hard. The last day will be doubled. I will break out to my heart's content, and everyone will be happy. Dugu Wudi's complexion turned bitter. That young master was the nephew of Dugu Wudi's second lady. He was from the Huang family of the Golden East City. The Huang family could be considered as a Xianqi family. But it was still far from being comparable to the Dugu family and the Jun family. However, he had overestimated his capabilities and had come here with the intention of courting the young master. It was unknown what the second lady was thinking. But she had bypassed General Dugu and led him to the old man and the old lady. But he had been rejected by the old man and the old lady on the spot. Firstly, their families weren't suitable. Secondly, that guy didn't have any skills. In fact, the old man Dugu Zongheng had said at that time, "What kind of small fry has come to the Dugu family to seek marriage? It would be better to marry Jun Moxie than to marry him. After all, he has a good family background." However, that brat's skin was very thick. He had used the excuse of visiting his aunt after his marriage proposal had been rejected. His intention was to wait for Dugu Xiaoyi to return, and then ask Dugu Xiaoyi for her opinion. After all, the 2 of them were childhood sweethearts, and they had played together since childhood. The 2 of them had grown up, and hadn't had much contact with each other. But they still had the foundation of their childhood feelings. Moreover, he had heard that the Dugu family had rejected the imperial family's marriage proposal. So, it seemed that they wanted to find a good home for their daughter. And they didn't pay attention to the fact that their families were well matched in social status. Moreover, the Jun Moxie whom his cousin had fallen in love with was a complete debauchee. Therefore, the young master's heart had become even more lively. Therefore, he had shamelessly waited for Dugu Xiaoyi to return. Dugu Wudi didn't care too much about it after the second lady begged him to stay. The Dugu family was a big family with a big business. How could they care about having one more person stay and eat? However, now that Dugu Xiaoyi had someone to rely on, it could basically be confirmed that the marriage between Jun Moxie and Dugu Xiaoyi had been finalized. Duguwudi obviously didn't want to keep this nephew of his to be an eyesore. It would be terrible if he caused some trouble. The great general had planned to chase that fellow back in a few days, but he didn't expect to hear that name from June Moxie's mouth at this moment. This is the Dugu family, not the June family. Since June Moxie was able to say this, it meant that he definitely had a certain degree of certainty. He was even able to confirm that it was this cousin young master who had done this. Then, the Dugu family would be made of wax if that was the case. Madame Huang was his second lady. She was his wife who had entered the marriage in a red sedan chair. She wasn't an ordinary concubine. She wasn't the wife of the first wife, but she had the status of a second wife. Looking at June Mosie's expression and the look in his eyes, it was clear that he wouldn't bend the rules even if the entire world were to kneel down in front of him if he were to confirm this matter. Not to mention the Dugu family's reputation, even if the entire world were to kneel down in front of him, he still wouldn't make an exception. When did this brat June Moxie care about human life? That little bastard. He's stirring up trouble for me. Duguwudi cursed in a resentful manner. He was incomparably vexed. Wouldn't it have been better if I had driven him back earlier? I shouldn't have listened to that woman's nagging. Mother few asterisk cur. This is bad, isn't it? You're doing this for the good of your nephew. But you've sent him to the gates of hell. Do you think you can provoke this brat, June Moxie? He can kill people with a glare. Your insignificant Huang family can't afford to provoke Fatty Tang. Moreover, the Tang family is also a Tianxiang aristocratic family. Fatty can casually offer a reward, and your entire Huang family will be exterminated in a single night. He's too courageous. The group of people were either anxious or at a loss. Some of them were like the Duga brothers. They were thoughtlessly crossing their arms as they watched the show. They had different expressions on their faces. Duguwudi quietly waved his hand and called over a guard. He then asked him to quickly invite Grandfather Dugu over to keep watch. After all, Duguwudi wasn't sure that he could stop this good son-in-law in case June Moxie went crazy. The young master finally appeared at the end of the flower path under everyone's watchful eyes. He was beaming from ear to ear as he walked over. He froze for a moment when he saw everyone standing in front of the latrine. Then, he regained his calm demeanor. June Moxie's drooping eyelids slightly opened as he looked at the Dugu family's young master from afar. The expression on the young master's face was clearly reflected in June Moxie's eyes even though he was several dozen feet away. It seemed as if he had used a pair of binoculars to zoom in on the Dugu family's face. This included the flash of shock on his face and the panic in his eyes. Moreover, his relaxed palm had clenched into a fist as he walked over. It seemed as if he was full of vigilance. Moreover, it could be seen from the slight undulation of his exposed neck muscles that his entire body had unconsciously stiffened when he saw everyone. That's right. It should be this brat. The above evidence is very sufficient. Uncle, are you looking for me? The young master finally arrived in front of them. He then respectfully bowed towards Duguwudi. At first glance, he had a slender stature and a handsome face. In fact, he had the appearance of a talented person. But, his eyes seemed to be hanging upside down. His expression revealed a hint of lust. His lips were also somewhat thin. In fact, it seemed as if he was somewhat ungrateful. I'm not looking for you. It's this young Master June who's looking for you. Duguwudi's face sank as he looked at June Moxie. You must answer truthfully if young Master June asks you a question. Do you understand? Young Master June? Young Master June Moxie? The young master turned his head to look at June Moxie. He nodded with a smile and spoke in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. My surname is Huang. I'm Huang Shu Lu of the Golden East's Huang family. There was a trace of amazement in his eyes. He hadn't expected that this notorious debauchee of Tianxiang City would be so handsome. Huang Shulu? This name has a profound meaning. Looking at the flow of an obscene book. Jun Moxie nodded. Then, he rolled his eyes. I heard that you saw young Master Tang go to the latrine last night? Moreover, young Master Tang brought him out? Everyone knew about this. Huang Shulu was stunned as he replied, That's right. Yesterday's incident has left a lingering fear in my heart. But I don't know if young Master Jun has any advice for me? I don't have any advice for you. I only want to ask you clearly. Where did you see young Master Tang Yuan? Was it on the road? Or was it in the latrine? Jun Moxie smiled gently and asked. He was somewhat impatient in his heart. Why would I spend so much effort if I hadn't been in the Dugu family? I would have used the soul-absorbing technique. This brat is at best a silver Xian level. So, wouldn't it be easy to capture him? However, Dugu Wudi was in the Dugu family's residence. So, Jun Moxie was bound to leave the Dugu family some face. He was at a loss. It was in the latrine here. Hee. I've always loved cleanliness. But I suddenly felt uncomfortable in my stomach last night. So, I was afraid that I'd make too much noise in the latrine of the guest room. So, I came here. Hee. I'm ashamed. I had to find someone to inquire about it. Huang Shulu's expression didn't change. Is that so? Young Master Huang, please pay attention. I asked you where you saw Tang Yuan. I didn't ask you why you ran so far to relieve yourself. Jun Moxie looked at him with a cold gaze. And an invisible pressure slowly attacked him. Please answer my question. I was about to squat down after I arrived here. Then, a man suddenly rushed in, grabbed my neck, and threw me out. I was startled at that time, ha. Huang Shulu shook his head and smiled. He then said, Everyone can imagine how embarrassed I was at that time. I had barely taken off my pants when I was lifted up. I was almost scared to death. Ha. He laughed twice. But he discovered that no one was laughing with him. So, he awkwardly stopped laughing. What happened after that? Jun Moxie asked in an emotionless manner. Then I realized that it was Tang Dashao. Only then did I realize that it was actually young Master Tang. At that time, I kept begging for mercy, asking young Master Tang to wait a moment and let me pull up my pants. But it seemed that young Master Tang had drunk too much and didn't pay any attention to me. Instead, he threw me out. My butt was nearly split into 8 pieces. That day, I didn't even pull up my pants. In addition, my stomach was already feeling uncomfortable, so I nearly made a fool of myself. By the time Tang Yuan came out last night, it was already midnight. Moreover, there were no stars or moon last night. So I couldn't see clearly. I'm afraid that it would have been even more difficult for you to relieve yourself in the latrine. You were caught off guard and your neck was grabbed. Your face should have been facing downwards. So you couldn't have seen who it was. So, how did you know that it was Tang Yuan who came in? Do you know Tang Yuan? I can see that you're a silver Xian expert. Tang Yuan is tall, but his strength is quite low. So, how was he able to throw you out? Jun Moxie didn't pay any attention to his joke. Instead, he continued to ask in a callous manner. That's because I've seen young Master Tang before. So, how could I dare to resist? Huang Shulu's eyes turned as he hastily replied. But the Dugu family had only invited me, your Jun Moxie, to their banquet last night. So, you weren't surprised when you saw Tang Yuan? Jun Moxie looked at him with pity. Huang Shulu, this is your last chance. You won't be able to escape death even if you hide under your uncle's crotch if I find out anything. So, you must think clearly. Jun Moxie's enormous spiritual pressure vanished along with these words, and Huang Shulu had just felt somewhat relaxed. But he suddenly felt a spiritual pressure that was 100 times more powerful than the one he had felt a moment ago. And it felt like a mountain was pressing down on him. In fact, Huang Shu-lu felt an impulse to kneel down on the ground and worship him. I really saw him here. I'm telling the truth. Huang Shu-lu's mind felt muddled under Jun Moxie's enormous pressure, and beads of cold sweat started to appear on his forehead. He wanted to defend himself for a moment. But how could his insignificant silver Xian-level spiritual power compare to Jun Moxie's? His calm state of mind had been crushed by Jun Moxie's imposing aura for a moment, and his mind was thrown into chaos. So, he spoke in a panicked manner, I can testify with my character. And I believe that my uncle and my cousins can also testify for me. How can I be a despicable villain who would push someone into a cesspool? Dugu Ing and his two brothers sighed as soon as these words came out. And that was because even they could hear the problem in his words. Jun Moxie hadn't even asked Tang Yuan how he had fallen into the cesspool from the beginning to the end. And this brother of his had said, how can I be a despicable villain who would push someone into a cesspool? Wasn't this a confession without being pressed? How about it? Jun Moxie looked at Dugu Di. Dugu Di heaved a long sigh. He closed his eyes and spoke after a long while, Emosia, he's my nephew. Can you give me some face? He insulted my brother? Jun Moxie interrupted his future father-in-law in a cold and detached manner. No one can insult my brother in this world. Jun Moxie coldly interrupted his future father-in-law. Chapter 465. I've finally realized that I'll be able to break out today. This is the third chapter. There's still one more chapter to go. Double the last hour. Where's the monthly ticket? Jun Moxie stood tall with a sneer on his face. He fixed his gaze on Dugu Di. Don't mention your Dugu family. Even the Emperor of Heaven won't be able to do this. I can't afford to do this. Dugu Di's lips squirmed a few times. He seemed to be in a difficult position. Why can't I? Moreover, young Master Tang didn't. Uncle, please don't speak anymore. You and my third uncle have a friendship of life and death. I only ask you one thing. What would you do if my third uncle, Jun Wui, were to accompany you, and were thrown into a cesspool? Jun Moxie Lingling asked. Fu *K. Who dares? I'll exterminate his entire family. Dugu Di was furious. Who dares to deal with my third brother? Then, why are you advising me to let it go? Jun Moxie looked at him strangely. Dashao's face was still cold and handsome. However, he was somewhat pleased in his heart. Great General Dugu is a worthy friend. Dugu Di was left tongue-tied. He couldn't even say a word to plead for leniency. Put yourself in someone else's shoes. Everyone has the same conscience. Jun Moxie's knife-like eyes looked at Huang Shu-lu. Moreover, he must have his reasons for doing this. Don't you want to know the reason? No. I didn't do it. Why do you insist that I was the one who did it? Tang Yuan accidentally fell into the cesspool. What does that have to do with me? Why do you insist on pinning this crime on my head? Huang Shu-lu suddenly jumped up, and his spittle flew in all directions. He knew that his Huang family couldn't afford to offend the Dugu family, the Jun family, or even the Tang family. He would be done for if this crime was proven. In fact, his entire Huang family would be in danger of being destroyed. Jun Moxie suddenly stretched out his hand and pressed down on his head. Jun Moxie's movements weren't fast. Huang Shu-lu clearly saw him stretch out his hand. He even tried to dodge it with all his strength. But he couldn't. He stared blankly as Jun Moxie's right hand pressed down on his head. An enormous and irresistible force surged forth. Huang Shu-lu's body couldn't move at all. He felt that his body was no longer under his control. He couldn't even close his eyes. Then, he heard Jun Moxie's voice, Huang, to open his eyes. Huang Shu-lu involuntarily opened his eyes wide. He saw a pair of eyes appearing in front of his eyes. Then, these eyes slowly turned into two bottomless ponds. Suddenly, he felt a subtle feeling of dizziness and confusion. It felt more and more like a dream. Huang Shu-lu tried his best to struggle out of it. But, he suddenly discovered that this pair of deep pond-like nothingness had suddenly turned into a vast starry sky. The brightest starry sky, the most dazzling starry sky. The stars were shining brightly, and he was flying aimlessly in the boundless starry sky. He had no goal or direction. At this moment, an unusually gentle voice that was mixed with the most amiable voice suddenly rang out. The voice seemed to be very vague and distant, like the warmest lullaby that could actually make one's heart and body completely relax and let down all of one's guard. Listening to this voice, it was as safe and comfortable as lying in his mother's arms when he was young. Huang Shu-lu's face slowly turned from hysterical disbelief to a cute, hopeful, comfortable, and relieved expression. "What's your name?" It was still that gentle voice, like the spring breeze brushing past willow branches, the fragrance of flowers wafting into one's dreams, like the whisper of a mother, the comfort of a loved one. Huang Shu-lu. Huang Shu-lu's face revealed a relaxed smile. "What were you doing last night?" June Moxie asked softly. The faces of the people of the Dugu family exposed an aghast expression. There's such a terrifying technique in this world that can control a person's mind. It can make a person willingly reveal the biggest secret in their heart. It's unimaginable. It's unbelievable. Last night. Huang Shu-lu's relaxed smile suddenly turned somewhat sinister. He felt somewhat pained. "I was in the Dugu family last night. I heard that they were entertaining their new son-in-law. Damn it, oh? Does this have anything to do with you? What did you do?" Huang Shu-lu's expression became more and more pained. "The Dugu family's new son-in-law should have been me. It should have been me. I've been longing for Xiao-yi for 6 whole years, 6 whole years. She's finally grown up now. But she doesn't know how to judge a person. She's taken a fancy to a debauchee, a notorious debauchee. How can I be reconciled to this? Moreover, our Huang family isn't a powerful family, and we've been repeatedly bullied in recent years. Perhaps we would have been exterminated a long time ago if we weren't relatives of the Dugu family. My Huang family will be able to rest easy if Xiao-yi and I can reconcile. But we won't be able to get closer to the Dugu family by relying on little aunt. But it'll be different if I become the son-in-law of the Dugu family. And I'll be able to go further." He smiled proudly as he spoke till here. Everyone was left speechless. "I've been looking forward to it for 6 years. Dugu Xiaoyi is only 16.5 years old. In other words, this guy has been thinking about Dugu Xiaoyi since she was 10 years old. It's too early. I had heard that the Dugu family had rejected the imperial family's marriage proposal. So, I immediately rushed over to ask for the Dugu family's hand in marriage. After all, they aren't very satisfied with that debauchee June. Anyway, I, Huang Shu-lu, am considered a rising star of the younger generation. Moreover, our families are relatives. So, I only need little aunt's pillow talk to my uncle. And things would have been very promising. But I hadn't expected that he would flatly refuse me. Moreover, he would entertain his new son-in-law in front of me." Everyone let out an "oh" sound as they understood. Dugu Zongheng had also gotten the news at this time. So, he had rushed over in a hurry. And he had arrived just in time to hear that brat's words. His face had turned purple with anger, and he was about to slap him with his palm. June Moxie gently shook his hand to indicate that he shouldn't act rashly in order to avoid disturbing him. "Oh, entertain your new son-in-law, how did you do it?" June Moxie's voice was getting softer and softer. "How did I do it? What else could I have done? Ha, I couldn't stand it anymore. I could hear them shouting and drinking from afar. It was so noisy that I couldn't sleep. So, I sneaked over to take a look. I wanted to see what kind of legendary son-in-law of the Dugu family looked like, but I saw a big fatty staggering out of the room when I arrived at the door. He grabbed me and said, "Take me to the latrine." What does that fatty think of me as? Is he a manservant? That damn fatty is so drunk that he can't even open his eyes. He must have been blind. I asked, "Who are you, Your Excellency?" And that fatty said, "I'm June. June. June." I became even angrier. So, this is our new son-in-law. I thought that the Dugu family had found a good son-in-law. But it turns out that he's such a fat bastard. Compared to me, he can't even be compared to me. Motherf asterisk cur, this is intolerable. So, I took him to the latrine. Then, I turned a corner. Then, I suddenly thought, maybe he'll choke to death if I take this new son-in-law to the latrine pit and push him down. He'll become a big joke even if he's lucky and doesn't choke to death. And how could the Dugu family accept him as their son-in-law with their temperament? Wouldn't I become even more valuable at that time? Hee 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 hee. He laughed maliciously. His face had turned ferocious and terrifying. Everyone sighed. This is a typical vile person's heart. I looked around and saw that there was no one around. So, I took this hateful fatty and walked towards the latrine. Damn it! That damn fatty was so heavy that he almost crushed me to death. I finally arrived, and I couldn't hold on any longer. It's funny that this fatty vomited all over me in a daze. And he even said thank you. So, I kicked him down. Unfortunately, he didn't drown to death. Damn that damn fatty! Everyone finally understood what was going on. Nobody knew about this at first. But, when I came out, several guards came to the latrine. Seeing that I couldn't hide in time, I simply shouted for help. Young Master June fell into the latrine pit. At this point, a vexed expression appeared on his face. In the end, I found out that this fatty isn't June Moxie. After all, I got the wrong person. But, although that fatty isn't June Moxie, his background isn't small either. He's actually the son of the Minister of Revenue. I can't afford to offend him either. Once people find out, not only me, but the entire Huang family will be in danger of destruction. All my painstaking efforts have been in vain, and I've even gotten myself into big trouble. June Moxie slapped him, and made him faint. He then stood up, and shook his head with a smile. The Dugu family is a place of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. They even have such a young and promising young master. We two brothers were drinking in the Dugu family, and we were plotted against. I don't know if this can be considered as deliberate murder. This matter is really unimaginable. Dugu Zongheng, his son, and his grandson's faces turned red at the same time. Such a thing had happened in the Dugu family, and it had left them feeling ashamed. June Moxie's voice hadn't been loud, but his words had pierced their internal organs like a red-hot knife. Dashao's tone had been flat, but his words had been extremely sharp. Moreover, he had spoken the truth, and hadn't used any exaggerated word. This was undoubtedly a great humiliation. Such an absurd thing had happened in the Dugu family, and it was tantamount to an extraordinary shame and humiliation. Their own guests had been pushed into the latrine pit by their own relative. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this was deliberate murder. Moreover, this guest was the grandson of the Duke of Tianxiang, Tang Wanli. He was also the son of the Minister of Revenue. He was also the future head of the Tang family. He was also the new god of wealth of the capital. The Dugu family's name would become infamous in the entire Xian continent if this matter were to spread out. Who would dare to come to the Dugu family to drink in the future? Chapter 466. Fourth chapter. 4,100 characters. The old man was extremely angry this time. He was jumping up and down and roaring. His face was full of excitement, and his stomach was full of anger. Great General Dugawudi was also indignant. His facial muscles were twitching and his cheeks were twitching. He was also unable to restrain his anger. His daughter Xiao Yi had found her husband with great difficulty, and it seemed that Jun Moxie was a dragon among men. Dugu Wudi was reluctant to admit it, but he had already accepted it in his heart. Moreover, his daughter had entered the city with a big belly. So, who would dare to accept her apart from Jun Moxie? It took a lot of effort to settle this matter. His father-in-law and son-in-law were drinking in high spirit. Moreover, Jun Moxie had also agreed to treat his father's old injuries. This was double happiness for the Dugu family. In fact, it was a good day to add happiness to happiness. Dugu Wudi wiped his cold sweat as he realized that his nephew wanted to push his son-in-law into the latrine at such a critical moment. Fortunately, he had made a mistake. He had pushed Tang Yuan into the latrine. Had he pushed Jun Moxie in instead, Dugu Wudi couldn't imagine what would have happened. There was at least one thing that was certain. Dugu Xiao Yi's efforts had gone down the drain, and her father's decades of chronic illness had lost all hope. As for Jun Zhantian, there was 100% chance that he would launch an attack on them. How could Jun Zhantian allow his grandson to suffer such humiliation given his temperament? As the saying goes, a scholar can be killed, but not humiliated. The two families would have been at loggerheads with each other. The father and son roared for a while. Then, the inner courtyard was thrown into chaos. A group of women rushed out. "It's so early in the morning. What's with the two of you?" It was the old mistress who questioned. "I'm not only going crazy today. I'm also going to kill people." Dugu Zongheng jumped up and cursed. "Who do you think you are?" The old lady glared at him. She was about to get angry. Suddenly, a delicate and pretty woman rushed out from behind her. Her face was full of panic. Lu Er, what's wrong? Why are you lying on the ground?" After shouting for a long time, he realized that Huang Shu Lu was still unconscious. He couldn't help but raise his head in panic. Master, what's going on? What's going on? Ask your nephew. Your Huang family has educated your descendants well. I didn't expect your Huang family to be so far-sighted. What a scheme! What a scheme! Dugu Wudi reprimanded with a cold expression. Jun Moxie looked at the noisy family and felt impatient. Moreover, he was still an outsider. He lifted his foot and walked out. After taking 2 steps, he suddenly stopped and turned around. He pointed at Huang Shu Lu, who was lying on the ground, and said, "This person, I'm giving face to the Dugu family. I won't do it myself, but he had to die." There was absolutely no room for discussion on this matter. If the Huang family is dissatisfied, I, Jun Moxie, am willing to reason with them at any time. He shouldn't have framed my brother like this. I don't care what he had done in the past. And I don't care whether he was kind and honest in the past. But he can't absolve himself of the blame even if he dies 10,000 times. Who dares to bully my brother? Not even the heavens. Moreover, I don't know how Fatty will retaliate against him and the Huang family. I won't guess Fatty's thoughts. So, I will support him unconditionally. That's all I have to say. His tone was awe-inspiring, ice-cold, and callous. His indifferent words were like a supreme monarch announcing his order to kill a person. No one could see that an invisible and silent stream of energy had penetrated Huang Shu Lu's head from the tip of his finger. The Dugu family may be biased, but this person won't be able to see tomorrow's sun. I won't leave any leeway. I won't leave any leeway. I won't leave any hope for my enemy to crawl back up. My brother's enemy is the same. After saying these words, Jun Moxie walked forward coldly. Wherever he passed, the crowd would involuntarily open up a path for him. Wait! The second madam stood up with a cold face. Young Master Jun, you're Xiao Yi's future husband. So, we're not outsiders. May I ask how my nephew has offended you? Why do you insist on putting him to death? Shouldn't you give me an explanation? June Moxie didn't turn around. He insipidly replied, "You can ask the great General Dugu about how he has offended me. I'm glad to tell you that the Huang family would have been annihilated before sunset if it hadn't been for the Dugu family, and the Dugu family. Not even the fowls and dogs would have been spared." June Moxie coldly said with his hands clasped behind his back, "You should rejoice." June Moxie walked away after he had said this. "Don't touch my brother no matter who you are. You'll have to pay a corresponding price if you do. An unbearable price." The second madam was about to say something when the great General Dugu slapped her across the face. He then scolded, "You slut! You still dare to pester me? You've ruined the Dugu family's reputation. Needless to say, you didn't marry me for a simple purpose, did you?" The second madam was also an intelligent person. She had deduced the whole story from the situation before her eyes. But she had been stunned by the great general's slap. "June Moxie! June Dashao! I beg you, please let my nephew go!" The second madam cried out. She couldn't think of a reason to plead for leniency. What condition could she have in order to get the June family to open the net on one side? The second madam thought for a long time. Then, she suddenly recalled a family legend. She recklessly called out, "Young Master June! Young Master June! My Huang family also has an ancestor in the boundless blood sea." Boundless blood sea. June Moxie paused in the distance. Then, he slowly said, "Even if his father is the king of the soaring heaven palace, it'll be useless if he dares to touch my brother." Then, he finally left. "You slut! Why aren't you going back to your room? You're disgracing yourself here. Go back to your room and think about your mistakes behind closed doors. Get lost." Dugu Wudi berated loudly. In his heart, he was very fond of this second madam. Therefore, he had agreed to her nephew's request to stay here. He had even bypassed him to directly propose to the old master and the old madam. But, he hadn't expected that such a big incident would occur. Dugu Zongheng's face turned black as he made arrangements. Then, he suddenly shouted at his son, "You're also a bastard! Why didn't you take care of your woman? What's wrong with crying and crying? Dugu Hao, quickly take your mother back to her room. Dugu Wu Di, you bastard! Why are you still standing here? Aren't you going to see Tang Yuan?" The old man was practically stomping his feet when he said the last sentence. Dugu Wudi suddenly realized that the key to this matter wasn't June Moxie. Nor was it the Dugu family. Instead, it was Tang Yuan. On one hand, June Moxie was doing this for the sake of Tang Yuan's reputation. On the other hand, he was also thinking about the Dugu family. After all, the two families were future in-laws. June Moxie had to take this into consideration. As for his own family, there were only a few people who met him. The key was Tang Yuan. If this matter could be covered up, it would be a great blessing. Even if it could not be completely suppressed, it must not be made public. Once this was made public and old Master Tang found out about it, the consequences would be dire. Therefore, Dugu Wudi complied and hurriedly chased after June Moxie. However, both father and son had come to understand one thing through this matter. Dugu Zongheng had said a few words when the news of June Moxie killing Mei Gao Jie and Kong Lingyang had arrived. June Moxie is a vicious and merciless person. He is a decisive person. So, no one should provoke his women or his family, no matter who it is. June Moxie's women and June Moxie's family were undoubtedly his reverse scale. Every dragon has a reverse scale. Touch it and you will get angry. You will bleed for 3,000 miles in anger. Now, he had come to a realization. You can't touch June Moxie's brothers, except his family and women. Especially his brothers. He had dared to make such a ruckus the first time he went to his father-in-law's house to drink for his brothers. He hadn't given the Dugu family any face. It was a pity that this father and son pair had overlooked another important matter. Perhaps they had overestimated their family's influence. After all, would Fatty not pursue the matter even if Da Xiao didn't want to? Money could enslave ghosts. It could also communicate with gods. Money was omnipotent in most cases. With Fatty's current net worth and his new status as the capital city's god of wealth, how could this matter be resolved so easily? Old Master Dugu looked at his 6 busy grandchildren. Dugu Hao had sent his mother inside. So, she wasn't here. Then, he sighed and said in a low voice, "I'm relieved about Xiao Yi's matter. But, I'll be relieved if you can make June Moxie recognize you as his brothers." Old Master Dugu's voice had been very soft. So, the 6 brothers hadn't heard him clearly. So, they tilted their ears and asked, "What? Grandfather, what did you say?" "It's nothing. Hurry up and chop this brat. Throw him to the dogs. I get annoyed just by looking at this brat." Dugu Zongheng's interest had waned. I couldn't get angry even after June Moxie had caused such a ruckus. A man should be like this. I don't fear the heavens for my brothers. This is a man's courage. A man's loyalty. Dugu Zongheng recalled June Moxie's last words. Boundless sea of blood? Even if his father is in the soaring heaven palace, it won't matter if he touches my brother. What an arrogant brat! What an adorable brat! Why did I think that he was a debauchee before? Old Master Dugu shook his head. He was puzzled. Could it be that I've gone senile? Grandfather, are we really going to kill him? Dugu Jie raised his head and asked with a bitter face. He had always been close to his 3rd brother, Dugu Hao. So, he was quite familiar with this distant cousin of his. So, he couldn't do it. Kill. Do it immediately. A fierce look appeared in Dugu Zongheng's eyes. He then said in a heavy tone, "This is a military order." The 6 people stood up at the same time. They stood perfectly straight and said, "As you command." Dugu Wu Di went over. Tang Yuan hadn't woken up yet. His snores were still shaking the heavens. June Moxie saw him come in and understood what he meant. He said, "Tang Yuan drank a lot yesterday. So, he might not be able to remember." "That's for the best." Dugu Wu Di sighed. His dark face had turned somewhat red. He coughed a few times and said, "This matter is really—" June Moxie smiled in astonishment. He hadn't expected that this uncouth man would apologize. He then said, "Don't worry. I'll tell Tang Yuan not to tell anyone even if he remembers." "That's even better." Dugu Wu Di wiped his sweat. He then remembered and asked, "Don't tell me that Tang Yuan doesn't know about this matter? Did you do it on your own? Didn't Tang Yuan come to you to complain?" "Brothers are important. If I wait for my brother to look for me before I do something, what kind of brother would I be? Would I still be considered a brother?" June Moxie smiled faintly. "That brat's target was me. Tang Yuan took the blame for me. He brought an undeserved calamity upon himself. I wouldn't be a brother if I remained indifferent." June Moxie smiled faintly. He looked at Tang Yuan's sleeping face. Then, he turned his head to look outside the window and said indifferently, "My brother's business is my business." Dugu Wu Di's body shook. It seemed as if he had been struck by lightning. June Moxie's words made him think of his most revered elder brother, June Wu Hui, and his 2nd brother, June Wu Meng. He still remembered the time when the brothers had gone for a walk outside Tianxiang City. They had been in the prime of their lives at that time. His elder brother, June Wu Hui, had been standing on a mountaintop at that time. He had been looking at the churning clouds in the distance. He had been moved by the world. So, he had patted Dugu Wu Di's shoulder and said, "Wu Di, you are my brother. Just like Wu Meng and Wu Yi, you are my brother." Dugu Wu Di still remembered that June Wu Hui had been standing on the mountaintop when he had said those words. He had been looking at the vast sky and the boundless sea of clouds. That indifferent tone of his voice had contained a deep brotherly love. That was an oath that he had sworn to defy the heavens. Brother. These were 2 sacred words. Dugu Wu Di had engraved those words in his mind for the rest of his life. Right now, when Jun Mo Xie said these words, the expression on his face and the demeanor he exuded were exactly the same as Jun Wu Hui's indifferent and resolute attitude back then. There was no difference. In fact, it seemed as if Jun Wu Hui had spoken those words from the side. Even the look in his eyes was exactly the same. Brother. My brother's business is my business. Wu Di, you are my brother. Just like Wu Meng and Wu Yi, you are my brother. Jun Wu Hui's words seemed to echo in his heart. They echoed over and over again. Jun Moxie had disregarded everything for his brother. He had disregarded a colossus like the Dugu family. But what had he done for his brother? What did he do when he knew that his brother had died a wrong death, that his death was not worth it, and that he had died unjustly? Dugu Wu Di suddenly felt a lump in his throat. It seemed as if he couldn't breathe. A strong emotion rose from the bottom of his heart. He awkwardly coughed a few times. Then, he covered his mouth and rushed out. But, he covered his eyes, and rushed out with his head covered. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to say anything. He only ran all the way back home. He had set up a memorial tablet for Jun Wu Hui. He looked at the cold memorial tablet for a long time. His fingers trembled as he said in a trembling voice, Big brother, I miss you. Little brother, I'm sorry. Then, he suddenly burst into tears. He fell to the ground and burst into tears. Chapter 467. By the time Tang Yuan woke up, it was already close to noon the day after the banquet. Fatty abruptly opened his eyes, got up in a roll and roared, F***ck your grandma, good boy, you dare to plot against your grandpa Tang, just you wait. He held his head and groaned as he cursed. The power of the hangover was unbearable even with his big head. Bang! The aroma of wine filled the air as a cup of fragrant wine was placed under his nose. Then, he heard Jun Mo Xie's voice, You're awake? Drink more wine to sober up. Tang Yuan retched and raised his tearful eyes. Third young master. My brother, don't torment me, your brother has lost face. Now go wash your face, and then come talk to me when you're sober, I have something to say to you. Jun Moxie snorted and glared at him. You're really becoming more and more promising. Tang Yuan giggled, and ran out like a wisp of smoke. A maid had already brought the water to wash his face. Fatty refused the moderately hot and cold warm water, and dipped his big head directly into the ice-cold wash water. After a long time, he finally raised his head. His big head trembled, and the water splashed all over the floor. Only then did he take the towel and carefully wipe himself up and down. Then, he waved his hand and ordered the maid to leave. Tang Yuan then looked at Jun Moxie and grinned. Third young master, I was really drunk yesterday. Yeah, you really drank a lot. Jun Moxie nodded. Now your head doesn't hurt anymore, right? It doesn't hurt anymore. But I actually can't remember anything about last night. It was just on the tip of my tongue, and it was obviously a very important matter. How come I suddenly can't remember it? Tang Yuan tilted his head, and his face was full of distress. It's fine if you can't remember, it's not a big deal. Jun Moxie sighed. He nodded without saying a word. If Fatty had kept asking questions after waking up, Jun Moxie would have been more at ease. However, Tang Yuan immediately said that he couldn't remember anything. Jun Moxie immediately confirmed that this guy remembered everything. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said that just now. It was just that he didn't want to mention it, at least not now. Both Da Xiao and Tang Yuan knew that it was fine as long as both of them knew it in their hearts. However, if they said it out on the spot, it would be too awkward. Regardless of the time, place, or person, it would be inappropriate. Fatty was not only saving face for himself, but also saving face for Jun Moxie. After all, this happened in the Dugu family, and Jun Moxie was almost certain to be the future son-in-law of the Dugu family. This unforeseen event might not necessarily be related to the Dugu family, but Tang Yuan couldn't reveal anything for the sake of his brother. At least, this wasn't the right time. Tang Yuan's chubby face had a silly smile on it as he said, "It's getting late and we should probably go back. I have to hurry back to inform those fat sheep that have come to participate in the auction to bring enough silver and gold. Ha ha, third young master, we'll certainly make a fortune this time. Humph, as long as you don't stuff your own pockets, I'll give you as much as you want." June Moxie glared at him. Tang Yuan cried out in grievance, "Third young master, I'm such a kind and honest person, I'm not that kind of person." The two burst into laughter, and walked side by side out of the door. Tang Yuan and June Moxie seemed very relaxed as they bid farewell to the Dugu family. They didn't mention anything about last night's drunkenness. On the contrary, Dugu Zongheng's mind was heavy. They were about to go out of the door when they saw a corpse being carried in. It was covered with a white cloth. Tang Yuan's pupils shrank as he took a deep look at the corpse. Then, he turned his head and walked out of the door with June Moxie. June Moxie was flabbergasted as he looked at Tang Yuan. He suddenly felt that this guy seemed to have grown up a lot. He seemed to have matured a lot. This brother of mine is truly a brother of blood. They didn't speak a word the entire way. The two were about to enter the aristocratic hall when Tang Yuan suddenly called out to June Moxie. His chubby face had always been full of smiles, but there wasn't a trace of a smile on it. Instead, there was a rare dignified look on his face. His eyes were emitting a sharp luster. "Third young master, that man's death was your doing, right?" "It was me." June Moxie didn't turn his head. He didn't want to see the expression on Tang Yuan's face. "That brat is dead. So, I'll support you no matter what you plan to do." "Yes, he's dead. But this matter isn't over yet." Tang Yuan seemed to be clenching his teeth as he spoke. "Who is he?" "The Huang family of the Golden East City," June Moxie replied in a dull tone. A thought emerged in his mind at the same time. The Huang family is finished. Tang Yuan's personality would have made it clear that he wouldn't have given up until he was satisfied with his revenge. With Fatty's current net worth and the influence he had under his control, not to mention a mere Huang family, he could even shake all the big families in Tianxiang. Wealth could enslave ghosts and even gods. When one's wealth had accumulated to a frightening amount, many things that were difficult to accomplish would become very simple, very easy. Last night's matter was tantamount to an extraordinary shame and humiliation for Tang Yuan. He was the dignified eldest young master of the Tang family. He was the future heir to the aristocratic hall. He was also the new god of wealth of the capital. He had been pushed into a latrine pit. None of these four identities could accept such humiliation. Not even if he was drunk. Not for any other reason. This humiliation could only be washed away with fresh blood. It was obvious that Huang Shulu's life was not enough for Tang Yuan to vent his anger. Therefore, he wanted to take revenge. The Huang family of the Golden East City had tragically become the target of Tang Yuan's revenge. June Moxie could imagine how tragic Tang Yuan's revenge would be. In fact, it would be too horrible to look at. It would hurt the peace of the world. After all, there were some innocent people involved. However, June Moxie wouldn't stop Tang Yuan from taking revenge. Tang Yuan wouldn't be able to lift his head as long as the Huang family of the Golden East City existed in this world if he didn't take revenge. This was only a psychological problem. But it would turn into a demon in his heart. The demon in his heart wouldn't go his way. The Huang family of the Golden East City? It's a very big family. Tang Yuan sneered. Then, he spoke in an extremely contemptuous tone, "I'll make them satisfied. I've told them to wait for Grandpa Tang." He turned his head and slowly said, "Third young master, I need to use the strength of the aristocratic hall." June Moxie didn't hesitate. He readily agreed, "You don't need to go through me. The manpower of the aristocratic hall will be available to you from now on. This includes the 900 million silver taels. You can call me if the manpower of the aristocratic hall isn't enough. I'll spare no effort to help you. June Moxie looked at him deeply. It doesn't matter what you want to do. It doesn't matter. Remember, it's anything. Tang Yuan paused. He sniffed for a long time. Then, he forced a smile and said, You motherf cur, he. I only want to borrow the manpower of the aristocratic hall. I'll use my own method to solve this problem. I won't be satisfied if I use the strength of the third young master. But, I believe that my current strength is enough to deal with many things. Tang Yuan's words were like a metamorphosis. The first half of his words were hesitant. In fact, he was choking with emotion. But, the second half was very clear and fluent. Fatty was able to control his emotions at this moment. The two men stood facing each other for a while. Then, Tang Yuan suddenly asked, What I'm doing is very likely to arouse public anger. And it could lead to serious consequences. So, why don't you try to persuade me? I'll listen as long as you speak. I'll speak? Will you really listen? Will you feel happy even if you listen? Why would I make my brother unhappy for the sake of an outsider? June Moxie replied with a question. He then said in a leisurely manner, I've said it a moment ago. No matter what you want to do, I'll think that you should do it this time. We'll have no choice but to face it together if we attract some formidable opponent. If we can't handle it and die, then so be it. What's the big deal about that? This is how the world is. The weak are prey to the strong. Those with bigger fists are right. There's nothing to say if you're weaker than others. But, if you're stronger than others, why should you swallow your anger? As for what happens in the future, who the F***ck is thinking that much? Thinking that far ahead? Do whatever you want. Don't tell me that what I've done in the past has been recognized by the public? Are the consequences small? Since I can do it, why can't my brother? Tang Yuan was silent for a long time. Then, he patted June Moxie's shoulder heavily. Good brother. Fatty's big and chubby face suddenly seemed to emit a strange glow. He suddenly grabbed June Moxie's hand and said with a smile, Let's go. Let's go take a look at my wife's face. June Moxie shrugged his shoulders. He was troubled by Fatty's sudden change of expression. He smiled bitterly and followed them in. When June Moxie caught sight of Sun Xiaomei's back, he felt as though he was shocked by a celestial being. She was still tall and short. However, her originally thick and sturdy frame had disappeared. In its place was an incomparably graceful figure. She simply stood there, giving off an air of invincibility and grace. She naturally exuded a refreshing aura. He actually felt the urge to commit a crime. June Moxie exclaimed in surprise. It had only been 3 months. However, the transformation was so great. It truly gave off a feeling of the blue sea turning into mulberry fields. This feeling was particularly obvious for the couple before him. Fatty Tang's growth from 306 to 524 was already a huge miracle. As for Sun Xiaomei, it was as though she had been reborn. From a burly man, she had transformed into a tall and slender beauty, beautiful lady. June Moxie greeted and walked over. June Moxie? The moment Sun Xiaomei heard June Moxie's voice, she turned around in surprise. All she heard was June Moxie's miserable scream. He said in an anguished tone, How could this be? This is. Looking at someone's back was a crime. However, looking at someone's face was a justifiable defense. It was too terrifying. Chapter 468. He saw that Sun Xiaomei's face was covered with abscesses. Her pimples were like a forest. Moreover, there were more than a dozen hideous mole marks on her face. This wasn't a girl's face. In fact, it couldn't even be considered a human's face. The only thing left on her face was a pair of black and white eyes. and they were fiercely glaring at Tang Yuan. "Oh my God!" June Moxie drew across with a face full of emotion. Sun Xiaomei, who was at the side, had been ridiculed by these two hateful fellows to the point of almost stamping with rage. Although Sun Xiaomei's body shape had completely changed, her original temperament had not changed at all. Previously, because of Princess Raimu's matter, she had been scolded by June Moxie, so she was somewhat afraid of Dashao. But now that she saw him ridiculing her appearance, she could not bear it any more. Her anger soared to the sky, and she did not care about her fear anymore. She roared, "You two bastards, are you looking for death? Hurry up and help me think of a solution. Are you itching for a beating by continuously ridiculing me? Hee, since you dared to ridicule me, then you must have the confidence to cure your face. If you didn't, then you wouldn't have ridiculed me. With Sun Xiaomei's intelligence, why didn't you see it?" June Moxie clicked his tongue twice and looked up and down with his head tilted. But Sun Xiaomei's beauty at this time is really rare. I have to appreciate it carefully, or I'm afraid I won't be able to appreciate it again in the future. Sun Xiaomei was angry and anxious at the same time. She covered her face and stamped her feet. Then, she suddenly raised her foot and kicked Tang Yuan's buttock. She angrily said, "Fatty Tang, did you bring your brother to see this old woman make a fool of herself? Or did you come to treat this old woman's face? What kind of person do you think I am?" Tang Yuan let out a strange cry. He covered his buttocks and begged, "Third young master, please hurry up and start. I, your poor brother, have been driven crazy by this woman these past few days. Let alone having fun, I don't even have the appetite to eat." June Moxie snickered and snapped his fingers. His face was full of smiles as he said, "You truly have the face of a devil and the body of an angel, whoosh." Tang Yuan dashed out. "I'm going to arrange for the auction. Third young master, take your time with your treatment. I believe you'll definitely be cured. Holy shit. You're handing your wife over to me just like that? You're really at ease, ah?" June Moxie screamed. The young master June's courage soared to the heavens as he faced this terrifying face alone. But, he was still worried in his heart. Haha. I can't take advantage of my friend's wife. How can I not have confidence in Dashao? Besides, if her face had recovered, perhaps I really wouldn't be at ease to hand her over to a big pervert like you. But now, if you like her, then you're really capable. Tang Yuan's voice came from afar. His last sentence was almost inaudible. So mean. June Moxie sighed. He hooked his finger and whistled lightly. His body swayed as he said, "Girl, come here. Let Big Brother have a look." With a schwarz sound, a saber light flashed, and June Moxie's finger was nearly chopped off. June Moxie laughed and dodged. What a fierce girl. Fatty's future life would definitely be very happy. June Moxie finally completed the first treatment for young Lady Sun after a long time. Young Lady Sun's illness wasn't that serious. In fact, it was purely a serious endocrine disorder. There was no room for excretion. So, all the poisonous gas had gathered on her face and couldn't come out. In this era, this was truly an incurable disease. But to June Moxie, it was a very relaxing and pleasant experience. This illness couldn't be compared to the old illnesses of Third Master June and Old Man Dugu. In fact, it was a piece of cake. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune carried a high degree of spiritual energy. So, it circulated through the meridians above Sun Xiaomei's neck. Then, the spiritual energy pressed down on her face. Sun Xiaomei felt a cool sensation on her face. It was extremely comfortable. But, this comfortable feeling only lasted for a moment. Then, she felt as if 10,000 ants were crawling on her face. And, it was incomparably uncomfortable. The pustules on Sun Xiaomei's face had started to show signs of rupture by the time June Moxie withdrew his hand. In fact, many of them were oozing with pus. June Moxie stretched out his hand several times. But, he was too embarrassed to do it himself. So, He asked young lady Sun to get herself a basin of water, and washed her face by himself. Sun Xiaomei tried to wash her face with cold water. But she suddenly felt that her face was wrinkled and uncomfortable. Many of the pustules had also ruptured, and they were extremely itchy. So, she couldn't help but scratch them. But she felt as if she had pulled off a thin layer of something from her face. She opened her eyes, and saw that a layer of skin had been peeled off from her face. It was a layer of unbearably filthy skin. Sun Xiaomei cried out in alarm. Then, she threw it away. But she couldn't help but touch her face. And she felt that the skin on her face had become much smoother. She was pleasantly surprised. So, she washed her face as fast as she could. Then, she rushed over to the mirror to take a look. There were still some red spots on the woman's face in the mirror. But the outline of her face was very clear. And it wasn't as frightening as it had been a moment ago. In fact, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. In fact, most of her fair and smooth skin had already been exposed. The effect is so fast. Sun Xiaomei stared blankly in front of the mirror for a long time. After a long time, 2 clear streams of tears flowed down uncontrollably. June Moxie sighed behind her and said, "At most, you'll need 2 more times. Then, your face will truly transform into the beautiful face that you should have. I believe that there will be another peerless beauty in the Imperial City. When you go out with Xiao Yi and Raimu in the future, you'll be like an orchid and a chrysanthemum. Each of you has your own advantages. You'll have 300% of people turning their heads to look at you. What a pity. Such a beautiful woman is actually Tang Yuan's fiancée. This is simply burning the zither and cooking the crane. It's such a waste of the scenery. Beautiful woman, why don't you follow me? I'll let you be my 99th concubine." Da Xiao's miraculous hands could bring the dying back to life. His words were getting more and more outrageous. The first half of his words were quite pleasant to the ears. They sounded like words of a human. But the second half was quite beastly. Go to hell. Sun Xiaomei forgot about her sadness. She felt ashamed and resentful at the same time. Then, she mercilessly punched the benefactor who was teasing her. June Moxie laughed heartily. He was overjoyed. After a long time, Sun Xiaomei suddenly let out a long sigh and said, "June, third young master, words cannot express my gratitude. You're Fatty's brother. I won't say too many polite words. I just want to hear one thing from you. Is it possible to reduce the weight of Fatty's body? I'm really worried now. With Fatty's body size, once he's over 30 years old. This is really a couple. Damn it. This one brought me here to treat the other's face. Then, the other one turned around and asked me to help this one lose weight. It's indeed dangerous. If you want him to lose weight, you'll need his full cooperation. Only then is it possible." Speaking of this problem, June Moxie also had a headache. How is this guy going to lose weight if he eats so much? Not to mention the meat and soup he eats, just the white steamed buns he eats 100 or so a day. Is this King human? Lose weight? Dream on. I beg you, you must help him lose weight. If he continues to gain weight, he'll definitely lose his life. Sun Xiaomei raised her head solemnly and looked at June Moxie with a worried expression. Fatty once said, if my face recovers, he'll take the initiative to call off the engagement. No matter who he is or what kind of person he is, he, in my eyes, is a good man. I really hope to be able to be with him, live a good life, hold your hand, and grow old together. As Sun Xiaomei said this, a faint blush appeared on her face. Fatty is a good man? When did that damned Fatty become so noble? Isn't this too much of a myth? June Moxie raised his eyebrows in surprise and probed. It's really difficult for this damned Fatty to lose weight, and he's so ugly. Once your face recovers, you'll become a peerless beauty whose beauty can cause the downfall of nations. Since Fatty is willing to call off the engagement, why don't you take the opportunity to gain your freedom? Any other man should be more pleasing to the eye than Fatty, right? We're all acquaintances here, so I'm just stating the truth. June Monsieur, when Fatty said that he wanted to call off the engagement, I could see that he was sincere. But from what you're saying now, I can also hear it. Sun Xiaomei regained her composure and wiped away her tears. She looked at June Moxie. Are you testing me on behalf of your brother? In your hearts, am I, Sun Xiaomei, such a fickle woman? Am I really that unbearable? About that. June Moxie felt a little awkward. He rubbed his nose and didn't say anything. Tang Yuan is just a little fat, and his appearance isn't outstanding. I believe that as long as it's a woman, no one will think that Tang Yuan is good-looking. But although Tang Yuan is fat, he's a real man, I'm glad about this. When I heard that I was going to be engaged to Tang Yuan, I argued with my father and refused to marry that notorious damned fatty, no matter what. So what if I'm ugly? At most, I'll just spend the rest of my life in seclusion. But after getting along with him for the past few months, I've changed my mind. Sun Xiaomei said softly, her eyes blurred. It doesn't matter if he's a good person, a bad person, a hooligan, or an evil tyrant. In any case, I've decided on him. Whether he succeeds in losing weight or not, I'm already destined to be Mrs. Tang. I'm willing. If he's an official, I'll be his wife. If he's a businessman, I'll carry the weight for him. If he's a beggar, I'll carry the dog-beating stick for him. Fatty is a good man, I like him. Sun Xiaomei raised her head and looked at June Moxie. She said slowly, no matter if he's rich or poor, handsome or ugly, I'm willing to accompany him for the rest of my life. If my fate is disturbed because of my appearance, I'd rather not have my face healed. At that time, one of us will be crippled while the other will be incomplete. We'll be a good match. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.